Hello, and welcome to episode 64 of Flix and a Six. I'm one of your hosts, Anthony Costanzo. With me, forever and always, the man, the myth, my accoutrement, Alessandro Valsi. Say hello, Al. You like that one.
Don't you want me?
Oh my god.
Sorry, that's a little inside joke between me and
It's good, though. It's good.
As is most of the show. Yeah, no, that was funny. The accoutrement thing. It reminded me of, did you ever see it? It honestly probably wasn't that great of a show, though it did have its funny moments. It was a couple of years ago on Comedy Central. What the fuck was it called? The whole thing was 80s. Like, the whole vibe was like super 80s, like neon colors, and it was voiced by
It was a cartoon.
Yeah, it was an animated show. It was supposed to be like very Miami Vice-esque, but it was like super futuristic, like lasers, like hover cars, shit like that. But everyone was dressed like they were in like Miami Vice, and all the coloration and all like the styling was like that. And it was like Rob Lowe was the main character, and he's a cop, and is Elizabeth Banks and Kate Mara and a bunch of other like famous actors and actresses, and I can't think of what the hell it was called.
It sounds fun.
It was fun. It wasn't necessarily good. It had its moments. It was funny.
I don't really have time to watch things like that.
It was short. It was short. It was only one season. All the episodes were half hour. So
all right, a little quick in and out. On this week's episode, we're going to be discussing Bohemian Rhapsody, a quick DC nugget, Lord of the Rings explosive alternate ending, all before diving into our flick of the week, Bad Times at the El Royale. But first, Al, what are we drinking?
We are drinking Sierra Nevada Stout.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's short, sweet, and to the point. It's a West Coast style stout, I guess. I didn't know that was a thing. I've heard of West Coast IPA is like a thing. Never heard of a West Coast style stout. So I don't know what that entails. I suppose this bottle may tell us. Sierra Nevada Stout is a full-bodied American version of the traditional black ale. It is perfectly balanced with big roasted malt flavors and earthy whole cone hops.
What's a whole cone? Is it like a type of hop, or is it like a style of?
So like it meaning so when I brew, I use hop pellets.
Okay.
A whole cone hop just means like when they pluck the hop, and I think they may have to I forget actually whether they have to peel like a husk off of it, but it's the whole thing. It looks like a tiny little pine cone.
Yeah.
And it's green. So that's like the whole cone. They use the whole thing right in. They don't grind it up. I use pellets. They're freeze dried because they're just easier to transport and stay fresh long term. They do whole cone pellets or plugs, I think, which is basically the same thing as a pellet. It's just a lot bigger.
Gotcha.
So you would like plop a couple of those in. The whole cone is like using the original fresh thing, and they've done a decent amount of like study into whether or not it really affects flavor and aroma and all that. And I think, at least as far as like home brewing goes, the difference is pretty negligible. Other than the first couple of days, the aroma is a little more intense.
Interesting.
But blind tasting, you can't really tell the difference from what I understand.
Huh.
Commercially, it may be a bigger difference, but I think it really comes down more to availability. You would have to use a ton of pellets for a big commercial brew.
Alrighty.
You want to take a sip?
Yeah, let's give this a try. I like a little lesson there. I love when you have more info for me about how this stuff works.
When I have beer nuggets?
Yeah. You have little hot pellets for me. Cheers. That's quite good. That's I would say perfectly balanced, as it says on the bottle there. Well done. I mean, I know they put that in my head, but it's quite nice.
Very tasty. It's not super heavy or overwhelming. It's almost in the style of like a Guinness in that sense. Not that it tastes like Guinness, but the body of it is light, whereas a lot of them, especially, I guess, I tend towards when I'm drinking stouts, they're typically Russian Imperial stouts, so they're a lot heavier. And
not
I don't mind that.
Smooth as a Guinness, but I like it.
Yeah. No,
I don't need it to be smoother, really, than this.
This is tasty.
I mean, it's black as night, though. It's ridiculous.
Yes. I've never heard it called a black ale like that before, which, I mean, I guess it makes sense. I've never heard that exact nomenclature.
Right.
I have another little thing on the back of the bottle here. In 1980, when we were building our fledgling brewery, we needed a beer with bold flavors to test the new hand-built brew house. That first brew was a stout rich with roasted malts and earthy whole cone American hops. We liked that original stout so much we've kept it as we've grown. Decades later, it still reminds us of that early pioneering spirit.
That's pretty great. That would explain why it is. There's no fancy name or anything. It's just Sierra Nevada Stout. I actually appreciate that more now.
No accoutrements, if you will.
You're right.
Sorry. While we were pouring and drinking and taking a sip there, I looked up. I looked up the name of that show, and it was Moonbeam City.
I can't say I've ever heard of it.
It ran in 2015. It was 10 episodes. Got canceled after the first season. But I'm going to read you the names of the main characters because they're fun. Elizabeth Banks was Pizzazz Miller. Will Forte was Rad Cunningham.
Oh my god.
He played the main rival to Rob Lowe's character, the lead character, Dazzle Novak. Kate Mara was Chrysalis Tate. We had I'm scrolling through the other names. There was a Helix Salazito, Sizzle Conrad.
Oh my god.
Powers Booth played the mayor, E.O. Jackson. There was I think it was Elizabeth Banks' characters, Pizzazz Miller. Her two sisters were Charisma and Sophistica.
Oh my god.
And I think it was, it's either his brother or her father was Accoutrement Miller. That's what made me think of it. One of the characters being named Accoutrement. I just couldn't remember who it was.
That's great.
There's a Fulton Squibb, Panache Miller, Vex Mullery. The names in this were incredible. Oh, that's right. Adam West played Dazzle's father, Razzle.
Yes! It's so good.
Actually, honestly, the show was funny. It wasn't good, but it was pretty funny. It's one of those things that if you got a couple of hours you don't mind kicking around, not necessarily all in a row, but you could bang it out in 3 hours. It wasn't a very long-running show.
I think I would have to watch that just to get to the Adam West stuff.
Yeah, he was funny if I remember correctly. The show was ridiculous. It was absolutely batshit insane.
If it's a shouting match you want, Quahog, it's a shouting match you'll get.
The ocean, right? Did he start screaming at the ocean? Was it? No, you're right. It was the city. It was someone. Yeah. Someone yelled out in pain. And he opens his window and he starts yelling out at it. That's right. Give me a second. I forgot to take my shirt off.
I appreciate that. Thank God. Let's dive right in, shall we? We don't have a lot of stuff this week. Pretty slow, but a couple of quick things. First one here, and we're gonna get in this one little headline I came across. Now we're not gonna dive too much into it. This is the DC nugget that I mentioned before. Very quick story. We're not gonna go deep into it. Here's the headline: DC moving away from Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck is a mistake. Counterpoint: no, it's not. Next story.
The Flash isn't gonna end up making it to theaters till 2021.
It's not gonna end up making it to theaters.
Probably not.
It's just not going to happen. On a more serious note, when I saw the movie for this week, there was a pretty extended trailer for Bohemian Rhapsody, and I'm really interested in seeing it.
I got that too.
Really looks really well put together. Rami Malek is a good actor, so I want to see him.
I'm becoming more and more interested in the idea of it, because I honestly don't really know much about them and him. And they're a good band, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And it just sounds like an interesting story, whatever the final details, whenever you think about Queen and him or whatever. It sounds like it would probably be an interesting story. You know
right.
What I mean?
At the very least, it's going to be entertaining. And when I go to the movies to see something like this, I'm not looking for pinpoint accuracy or anything like that. I am looking to be entertained. I like the dramatization of a real story. And then all it really does for me is if it brings up a couple of points that maybe I'm interested in, I'll then go back and research those things. I'm not looking to it for a point of truth. I'm looking to it for entertainment. So
I actually have mixed feelings about that when it comes to. I mean, I'm not really a big like documentary person, but I don't know. I don't mind some exaggeration and some hyperbolic engaging with the material, but I really don't like when true stories like dramatically change the details.
Right. I can agree with that.
You know what I mean? And I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, but there's definitely been cases where it's like it's something that I know the material of when I've seen the movie. I'm like, that's really not how it happened. You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing kind of irritates me.
Well, again, though, that's when I go into movies that are based on a true story or a entertaining biopic, not for straight up factual like viewing. I go to a documentary for those things.
It's not something you would use in the school to teach someone as like their primary source. It's just I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like I don't mind like if you embellish some stuff. You know what I mean? Like, but there's sometimes where like you'll see like just like wholesale like changing of it. It's like no, if the story was that good that you had to come on, like then you shouldn't have to change the details. You know what I mean?
No, I can agree. I can get behind that. I hear you. That's it. I don't really have much more on that particular topic. It's just that the trailer looks good, and I like the way that a lot of it was shot.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really think about the actual makeup of the trailer itself, but yeah, no, it was cool. I'm struck by this. That might be the first time that I've actually seen a good like up close like image of him playing him, and it's uncanny how much he looks like him actually.
Yeah, it's eerie.
Yeah,
I gotta say that. I mean, I say that I like the way the trailer is put together. It is, but to step back for a second, it's like super generic. It's just one of those hooks that always gets me. It's almost as like it could be any trailer for any movie where it's just like swell the music to make it sound exciting. Now have somebody like throw a bunch of stuff off of a desk in anger, and then say, "Man, we flew too close to the sun." Like that. I mean, that's just a generic trailer that's used a lot, but I still enjoy it. I recognize it. I know that it's not super unique. But I like it.
I see what you're doing here.
Right. Like you literally could have done that for like I mean that could have been the trailer for Spotlight, right? Like we have a story. They're squashing the story. And they throw the stuff off the desk, and then they really get it. They bring it home in the end. But yeah, it's just I just thought that was funny. But the way that it was shot though, it just I appreciate a good trailer.
Yes, we've talked a lot about trailers. And about what we like and dislike in trailers on the show. It's good to acknowledge the good, right? Because we do a fair amount of complaining, justifiably so, I think.
For sure. And there's one funny thing. Aside from the trailer being good, I actually was pretty forgettable whatever else was on screen. I don't know if that was just it being late and me not really caring too much and wanting to just get to the movie. But the funny part was this was one of those movies that I went to go see. And there were so many trailers that after like, I don't know, 6 of them, I was like, what are we seeing again? I forgot what we sat down to actually watch.
It was like, there was I don't remember what the movie that it was that they were supposed to be seeing, but there was the Family Guy joke about that, how all of the intro things that were that like are the little snippets for the production company look like the start of the movie. And Peter keeps thinking the movie's starting. And it's, it's just another production company. And no, there we go. It's like
too many cooks.
It's like 8 times, and it's like, no.
That was great. And I turned to Chris. I was like, what are we seeing again? He goes, that movie that nobody has any idea what it's about. Yes. Bad Times at the El Royale. Perfect. Let's actually touch on that for a second before we're not going into the movie just yet. We've got enough stuff to talk about. But on the topic of trailers, this is one of those movies where I had no idea what the movie was about. The trailer does no justice to the story at all. And then I realized after seeing the movie, you can't. So I was like, okay, I get it.
Well, I was interested in that because there's been a lot of talk with this movie when when it was like, with some of the coverage of it in the lead up to it coming out, about how difficult it is to get this sort of movie made, because so many movies are now like either extension of a series of some sort, or an expanding universe, or it's a remake of something, or it's made off an existing IP, you know what I mean? Whether it be a novel that's being made into a movie the first time, whatever. That there's such a small window for this sort of thing, outside of stuff that's like Oscar bait type movies. And even that, a lot of that is based on a true story or whatever. And it's just interesting how like it's kind of a throwback to even maybe 20 years ago, where not that I would really call this an action movie, though there's a fair amount of action. It's hard to get this sort of movie where there's not a lot of these types of movies that shine out as something that, because it's hard to justify a big payroll if you don't know if you're going to get people in front of it. And the nature of the movie, you can give away some of it. I thought some of what the movie was about, but certainly not anything close to the core of what the movie was about, right? Was in the trailers, because it's so tied into the story itself, because it's such a complex, layered situation that you can't give it away in a trailer. Otherwise, you might as well just release the movie as a trailer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. What ends up happening now that I've seen the movie, I know what's going on. You watch the trailer, and the trailer ends, and you go, What's the deal with all these people? That's the movie.
Yeah, you got it.
It's like when in Seinfeld they go to pitch the show about nothing. Well, what'd you do this morning? I got up, I got ready, and I went to work. That's a show. But what happens? Nothing. That's not at all the case with this movie. Lots of stuff happened. My third, I'm going to take this last one, and then I'm going to give it to you for your news and nuggets. So my third one here was the Lord of the Rings explosive alternate ending. And the reason this comes up is because 15 years later, more tidbits continue to come out about these movies, like production values and stuff like that. And there's actually, I think it's either a movie or a book being, let me see. There's a forthcoming book that's coming from Time Magazine, according to him, which is referencing Entertainment Weekly. Anything you can imagine, Peter Jackson and Making of Middle-earth book coming out about, like, the production and all that. And there was a fun little story in there about how they were shooting on a space of New Zealand, of like abandoned military training area, where there was like live shells, artillery shells still there, like buried.
Okay. And
there was a safe zone that was marked off, like that they could shoot in and stand in. And in the scene where, what's his face? Aragorn is delivering his speech outside the gates of Mordor. He goes a little improv, and he goes too far outside of the zone. And this is the quote: "Jackson remembers waiting for the explosion," Nathan writes in his book. That's just like, could you imagine having found their perfect Aragorn, they were going to watch him get blown up by an unexploded New Zealand bomb?
I have questions.
Yes.
Namely, why were they shooting against the edge of the safe zone?
No idea. Next question.
Like, shouldn't they have drawn okay, this is the safe zone, and then draw another box inside of it, and this is the zone we'll shoot in, so we never get up against the edge of the safe zone, because you realize if you use the whole space, that you may walk over the line.
Right. I don't know how far outside he went.
Eat people.
But what'd you say?
I said, think people.
It's so good. But could you imagine that story though? You're 3 movies in, right? You're filming this epic scene, and your lead character explodes, like on set. That's
every once in a while you have, like a stuntman dies or something making a movie.
Yep.
And then you have a situation with like Paul Walker where they're almost done shooting a movie and he just happens to die off set in a freak accident. With 99% of his scenes having been shot already. And I'm guessing probably most of Lord of the Rings was done being shot at that point, but maybe it wasn't.
Right.
I don't know how at that stage. Yes, you get like a voice actor who does a really good impression of him and have him do narration. I
have no idea.
Be pretty weird to swap him out during like the third of the 15 endings of that movie.
It's like this alternate universe where it happens, and they go like, "What are we gonna do now?" And Peter Jackson goes, "No, I can work with this." And just like lets it happen on screen.
Just picturing,
and that rallies everybody.
I'm just picturing like them coming to shoot like the last few scenes with him, and it's a new actor, and it's like that Anchorman where Veronica has to take over the thing, and Steve Carell just turns and goes, "You're not wrong."
Yeah. Aragon. Amazing. What little tidbits do you have for us this week?
Okay. I have a quote that I found vaguely entertaining from Evangeline Lilly about the making of the end of AntMan and the Wasp.
Okay.
The post-credit scene. Now, if you haven't seen AntMan and the Wasp, and if you haven't seen Avengers Infinity War, just take off the next, let's call it 90 seconds of the show. Just fast forward real quick. Spoilers, guys. So this is a direct quote from Evangeline Lilly. "I'm so grateful that they cut it out, because at that point I have not seen Avengers Infinity War. So I really had no idea what a dusting looked like, or felt like, or what's supposed to be. And I don't think Peyton Reed really did either. Once I watched Avengers Infinity War, I realized I dusted terribly. I did a really bad job of that. I had no idea really what was happening." So this is from a story where apparently they shot that scene at the end of the post-credit where all of them turn to dust.
Mm-hmm.
They shot them in the way that it was like with Avengers Infinity War, where they show them disappearing. They shot it, but they didn't have the Russos there, and they hadn't seen the cut of Avengers Infinity War yet, so they didn't know what it was supposed to be looking like. So they're just like, let's just do a thing where everyone's disappearing or whatever. And they realized apparently that they fucked it up, and they were like, we'll just show him as dust. It's not important to watch them turn into dust. And I just found that whole situation funny, but especially the way that she's just calling it dusting.
Yeah.
Like, as a verb.
Yeah. That's really great. It's kind of funny, though, is I think that would have taken away from what we ended up getting as a pretty great scene.
Probably.
Yeah. Interesting. That is really fun. I actually, I've heard this before, like back when the movie had come out, Michael Douglas he didn't watch Civil War. He didn't know anything about what was going on. And there's an honest. I brought that up when we
did one of the episodes right after it.
But there's an honest trailer for Ant-Man and the Wasp where they cover that, and like he says something like, "Oh, Dad." This is wonderful. I love those honest trailers, man. They're so funny.
Yes.
If you're not familiar with those, that's just a quick YouTube search, and you will fall down this insane rabbit hole of comedy. It's wonderful.
After we did A Quiet Place a few weeks ago, I was like, you know what, that probably made for an interesting, especially considering I was the one who had a lot of issues with it. I was like, that probably made for an interesting, honest trailer, and I was not disappointed. I found it to be entertaining. I think I had sent it to you. I don't know if you saw it.
I had seen it before, but if you should watch it for movies that you love, because it's really funny, and then you should also watch it for movies that you hate, because it feels like just more of tearing them to shreds.
Vindication.
Yeah, it's great. That and the CinemaSins are two great sets of
that one I've found entertaining too. A little less so, and not that I watch either of them all that often, but when I stumble across, I'm more like, oh, if there's an honest trailers one for, like, I'm more interested in when I hear that than I am when I hear about a CinemaSins one.
Well, that and the CinemaSins it's pretty long. They could be like,
yeah, that's probably part of it too.
Upwards of 20 minutes in a lot of cases, because they go through like the entire movie, and it can be funny. You know what it is? The delivery during those videos is really funny.
Yes,
that's so. It's all about the delivery with those things. It's great.
Okay. I just remembered right now that I forgot to remind you. Did you watch that thing I sent you the other day?
Shit.
No, it's okay. You didn't watch it. It's several minutes long. We'll do it next week. Not a big deal. It's not super time sensitive. Though there's a funny story that goes along with it as well. Okay. So we'll file that away for next week. I have one other thing. This week's segment of What Are We Watching? The first one I have three specific things I want to talk about. One, have you been watching Jim Carrey's new show?
No, I want to though.
I figured you would because I know you've been such a big Jim Carrey fan.
I love him. Yeah.
I have not watched any of it yet. I've been trying to figure out whether I actually want to. I kind of do. It seems like they're doing kind of a twisted-ish version of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe that I got.
But the reason I thought about it was just because it's so interesting to see him like really working, like Jim Carrey, because he hasn't been for a while now.
Oh, the past few years, yeah.
Yeah, and to see him throw himself at this sort of role that seems to really fit the vibe of his real life that he's been portraying for the last couple of years. Because I feel bad. I don't. The thing is, I can never really tell anymore where he's at.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you see him speak publicly. I mean, he's just a weird story over the last several years. And
oh yeah. Honestly, if you want like a little bit of a gauge on that, you should really watch Jim and Andy.
Yeah.
It's a very unsettling documentary.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard it's interesting. I never saw the actual movie either. That it's about or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Really good movie too.
I was struggling to remember what the actual movie was called. So that's it. Yeah, no, I like when I hear him, I can't tell if he's joking, if he's not joking, if it's one of those things where you're supposed to be in on the joke or not. I can't tell where he's at anymore with any of it at any given moment. But I found this to be interesting. I know some people have been interested in the show, and I just happened to see someone who's been watching the show apparently said, I think it was over this past week's episode, like, I've been interested and on board with the show, but if it continues going the way that it has, that I'm probably not going to stick along for the ride. Mm. So that's why I was wondering if you were watching.
What's it called?
I think it's called Kidding.
Kidding, yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I have to catch up on that. I would like to see it.
Yeah, I'm undecided whether I'm ever going to watch what I'm actually going to watch it or not. But I figured either you were watching or you had it like up next type of thing. You know. Okay.
For sure.
Let's talk about something that I am watching, and I think you are watching The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
So
that was way too much excitement. The excitement behind that was because there's some crazy nonsense going on, and I feel like they're not trying as hard, and it's funnier to me, and I'm enjoying it.
Well, what do you mean by that?
I don't know. They're just like, well, there's the overacting is not being cut and reshot as much, and it definitely was in the past. There's just Rick just being straight up over the top for no reason at all, which is really funny to me. Like, there's just a scene where he just, he does his whole turn to the side, and he looks over his shoulder, and he like kind of talks really dark into the radio, and I'm just like, you were just asking somebody what the status of something is. Why are you so upset? And it was really funny. And Kim and I just looked at each other, and they were just like, "That's dramatic." And then there's another, like, they're like, we want to do something fun. So they were like, you know what we should do? We should roll over a bunch of zombies with logs. How can we work that in? And then they just built a scene around it for like no reason.
Well, it's great because I read like I kind of like had the thought unformed in my mind, and someone was like, so we're just straight up ripping this out of the playbook of the Return of the Jedi. Like, we're just going with the Ewok plan and just taking them out with the rolling logs.
Yes.
The only way this is okay is if we circle back around and someone gets stomped on. One of the Alexandrians gets stomped on by an ATST. Like, that's the only way we're allowed to have this.
It's ridiculous. There was also a scene of, this man's arm is broken, we need to cut it off.
I mean,
probably it's possible that was valid, but it was a very quick judgment call.
It's valid when you decide that the person who's going to be the on-site medic for a vast undertaking of construction is going to be a teenage girl who has approximately a week hands-on experience.
Now, to be fair, we're talking some straight up spoilers for this week's episode of the show.
But tangentially enough that it's not actually spoiling anything.
True, and on the same token, let's be serious. It's the second episode in a Walking Dead season, so nothing really happens.
So let me just tell you this: I'm not gonna do the thing, but what we've said to you has been less directly a spoiler than a headline of an article. You know how like you have like when you open like a new tab on like Google Chrome.
Yeah, I did one of those before. It's something about Arrow, and I was like, "Son of a bitch."
You see like the stories you may be interested in, and I usually scroll through that when I'm looking to just read something when I'm bored.
On account of my interests.
Tell me something new, internet, and it's like I'm looking through, and a lot of times it's like Episode 9 Star Wars actor has, quotes. I'm doing a bad job, but it's like, okay, I'll click on that and see what the quote from this actor is.
I'll bite. Yeah.
Story about whatever,
It's just straight up clickbait.
And one of them, but not even offensive,
it's just catered clickbait. That's why it works so well.
But even stuff that's just like the headline of an article. It's like, oh, that article sounds interesting. And then there was one, it was from like the Hollywood Reporter, I think. Or the Wrap, one of them, like a decent publication, and that thing you just talked about the losing of an arm, the person who lost the arm, and the fact that person lost an arm was in the title of the article.
That's kind of funny.
This was on Monday morning. I hadn't watched the episode yet. It aired Sunday night. This was on Monday morning. I'm like, dude, like, what? Usually when you see that article, it was. OMG, spoilers.
Right.
This character lost their arm and we can't believe it or something like that. You know what I mean? And this was just like straight out, like in a sentence, just laid out, this person lost their arm last night.
Well, the person writing the article had the same feelings towards it that I did. This doesn't matter at all.
I mean, it mattered. But, so the reason I brought up The Walking Dead is, some of what's gone on with the beginning of the season, and I don't just mean on screen. I mean the whole bubble surrounding the existence of the show. I found interesting. They have a new showrunner this season.
Okay.
I think her last name is Kang. I want to say is it Angela? I don't want to. Yep, I was right. Angela Kang is the new showrunner of The Walking Dead. I think she's been a writer on the show since season 2.
Okay.
They've
good season.
Done a lot of new stuff starting right. There's a time jump of a year or so right from the end of last season. We've lost some characters, some big characters in recent times. We're starting off with a whole new storyline, all this sort of stuff. There should be excitement around the start of a new season. They announced that the viewership of the first episode of the premiere of this season was down to roughly 6 million viewers, which is half of what it was last year, I believe.
Oh, damn.
I think it was 12 million at the premiere last year. And this year it's down to 6, which is still a really high number as far as cable shows go. But it's down from, I think at its peak, the show was like 17 or 18 million. Wow. Was like what their like high watermark for viewership was. So it's fallen on pretty hard times. And I found that some of it, what I found interesting is, I don't know if you noticed in this week's episode, and again, this isn't really a spoiler, there's a scene where Rick is speaking to someone and kind of giving them a narration of recent events, and they said, we've got a new beginning, we're building something here. And it was a little too on the nose that this is supposed to be a meta moment for like the show itself as well,
right? In
addition to just the storyline. And what I found myself, especially considering all the shit I was talking about it last week or the week before, not having watched any of the show yet, after having watched the first 2 episodes, it's actually kind of good.
Where they're going?
Oh, just the 2 hours of the.
It's better. It's better than it's been.
In a couple of years.
I'm not ready to say that it's good.
The first 2 episodes are dramatically better than it's been for like 3 years.
They're doing a lot
to
better.
The point where I'm almost even willing to start to back off my whole I want to leave the second that Rick's off the show. I actually, through the first 2 episodes, not all of it, but I found myself caring about kind of what's going on with some of the characters and storylines.
Yeah, they did a deep dive on a character for a little bit. I'm not going to go too far into it. On a character in this episode that is a new character, and it was the backstory was interesting, and the way that tied into another character's past was interesting. And I was like, oh, that's that's pretty good. And Kim and I were sitting there talking a little bit about it afterwards, but like Maggie is a hard ass now, and it's like, yeah, it makes sense that she's not that she doesn't want to budge and that she's probably not going to. And I think that they're doing a pretty good job of keeping the characters developed to the point where they have brought them to now, and they're now really trying to hold on to that. Like things with Daryl are coming to a head, things with Maggie are coming to a head. The people that follow Rick fairly blindly are they almost seem like drones. It's interesting.
Well, and not just that, but I mean, a show that for the last several years has leaned so heavily on contrivance. There's still some of that. The whole situation that came to a head in the climax of last week's episode was very contrived. There's many ways that they could have got around it. And I was very irritated with where it was going until it was resolved at the end of the episode. Mm-hmm. And then with that story kicked off in this episode, I actually even forgave it its contrivance some, because it was a bad process to get to a good result. Mm-hmm. In the sense that, like you said, Maggie's storyline is interesting. Yeah. Her interaction with the other characters, both important and not important, is interesting and make me want to pay attention. And it's just something as simple as getting back to the basics of what made the show good. It's character-driven story.
Yes.
It's character-driven story, and the narrative points are moving towards something, not just moving towards set pieces.
So while I agree with that, I had stated earlier that it doesn't matter. A lot of the things that I had mentioned earlier, like that it doesn't matter in the context of it. While I agree with you in the context of the first two episodes, the first couple and the last couple of the season are generally pretty good.
They haven't been for several years.
This is better than the last. At least the first and last are always good. The stuff in between,
they're not good.
Debatable, but the stuff in between is all bad on the previous seasons. Like the previous, maybe 3 or 4. I don't remember exactly how long. But with this one, I'm a little bit jaded by the previous season, so I'm not hopeful that it's going to stay this way.
Well, we both are. What I'm saying is I'm curious with a new person running it.
Right. It could be a good thing.
And a new direction. What they're doing is something they haven't done in a few years.
A new beginning.
Yes. So the reason I bring all of this up is, what the fuck took them so long? It really took them shedding half their viewership to do this. When everyone has been yelling for this for years, it's beyond the point of no return. Because you and I have been diehard fans of the show, and we're already talking like we have one foot out the door. Yeah. And many people have already taken both feet out the door. They're never coming back. Mm-hmm. And I'm not entirely sure that I'm going to stay yet. I'm softening on that, but I'm still not sure. You sound like you're unsure as well.
I am. I'm not gonna say that I'm in it for. I mean, I'll probably continue to watch it over maybe until they do something even more frustrating to me. I'm not super invested. I used to be there 9:00 Sunday night watching it. Now it's just I watched it today. It's a Wednesday. It's not really a big deal.
And that's how I've been doing it for a while too. If I got time on a Monday, if I got time on Tuesday, whatever, I'll watch half an hour, and then the next day I'll watch the next half hour, whatever. It's just the arrogance of this show having been at the top for so long. It took them so long to turn the direction of the ship. It's infuriating, because when they get back to it being kind of good again, it's oh yeah, that was why I watched this show.
To begin with, yeah. It's interesting. I'm kind of curious. I wonder how much of an impact on the viewership the whole Chris Hardwick thing had.
I don't think it had very much, because they shed a ton of viewers after last year's premiere. Last year's premiere was the debut of Who Got Killed by Negan.
Yeah.
The week after, it plummeted. They dropped 20 or 30% of their viewers that in 1 week.
Mm-hmm. Still, Well, yeah, and then I guess the climax is not that. Oh, I guess the Carl stuff was pretty nuts. But I guess the resolution of what they've been building towards this whole time, I could imagine for some people was just not what they wanted.
But it's again, it's not like hey, this is annoying. This is years in the making.
Mm-hmm.
They have had plenty of time to correct their course.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll continue to watch the season. I am right now. The thing that I am most curious about is how Andrew Lincoln exits the show. That's what I really want to know.
Which is actually coming. That's coming sooner than I expected. He's only going to be in 6 episodes. Lauren Cohen's only going to be in 6 episodes.
She's exiting too?
Yes.
Interesting. Huh. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm curious. Those things I am curious about. But that, them only being in 6 episodes doesn't mean it's not the entire season.
What do you mean?
You've seen Walking Dead before. They cut characters out for multiple episodes at a time.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you mean, but the way they've been parsing it out so far, I don't think that's the case. I think it's a 6 episode run.
We're gonna get 2 episodes about Father Gabriel's left eye. We're gonna get 3 episodes about a helicopter.
Well, at least the helicopter thing seems vaguely important.
We're gonna get 1 episode.
I don't know if it'll
just
be good.
Close-up shots of people's faces.
Yeah, the funny thing is, considering I'm pretty sure she had 0 lines in the first week of the episode. Jadis, who's going by Anne, is that what it is now? I'm so glad. I'm so glad that she's using a normal voice. Oh, it's so much better.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
I at first I was confused because I couldn't remember where they left off with her last season. Like the last thing I remembered was missing the helicopter. I don't remember what she did after that on the show. And then she was with them on their little excursion last week to DC.
Yeah.
But when I first saw her, because I wasn't paying attention. I had it on while I was like making myself breakfast, and I was like, "That looked like what's her name? Is she still around?" Huh? And she had 0 lines, and like you just saw quick like shots of her like for like 2 seconds from like across the room, and I'm like, I think that's her, but I don't know. She's not dressed weird. Her hair is normal. Like, we'll figure it out eventually. Which is exactly what happened. I didn't see her again the rest of the episode, and then she's just in it again, and she's talking, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's her, but she's not speaking like an idiot anymore. So, yeah, okay, no, that's her. Yeah, that's right. Okay, we got a close up of her for a few seconds while she's talking. Yeah, that's her. Huh? Oh, they got a thing going on. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Also, this is weird.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's just a shame to me as I see all of this. Like, hey guys, we're trying to fix it. Like, we got a new beginning. Like, you could have tried that like 3-4 years ago, man.
Yeah, for sure. I'm telling you though,
I don't know.
Those episodes that I just mentioned, those are the episodes that's going to happen, and that's what's going to be like. Yeah, we still have it because in the end they have to fill 16 episodes, right? Is that what it is? It's 8 and 8.
Is it 8 and 8 or 7 and 7?
I think it's 8 and 8. I know because it drags on for a really long ass time. So we're also going to get. We had mentioned somebody loses their arm, so we're going to get 20 minutes in an episode of like us finding out that he was actually left-handed. So it's going to be like 20 minutes of him learning how to use his right hand to eat soup. We're going to have another 10 minutes of them building the plow that they broke. And
someone was already doing that at the end of the episode.
We're going to have another 5 minutes of them bundling up the logs that they had to cut that rolled down.
Which
and then that's
30.
That's 35 minutes, right? So that's the whole show. Because fucking AMC.
We were doing so good up until this last little bit where we didn't actually reveal like any inclination as to who it was who lost their arm until you finally gave we cut the population in half as to who it could be.
By saying that it was a guy. It was Aaron. I'm not sorry.
I mean, you're not sorry for you, but if anyone's listening who hasn't watched yet, still likes the show, unlike us, I try to avoid that sort of thing without at least saying spoilers ahead of time.
Yeah, we're too far into it. But anyway, interested. I like I said, I still want to see how. Well, now more so. I actually didn't realize Maggie was leaving, so now more so that character. Probably that character. I'm really
remember that story that we were tracking last year that there was like contract disputes with the two of them and Norman Reedus.
I remember there being contract disputes with her, but I didn't know that it ended up with that she's done after this.
Well, the big story was Andrew Lincoln, but it was quietly mentioned behind that she was leaving too.
Yeah, that's interesting to me, and I think that's going to end up, depending on how they handle it, that could end up for some interesting episodes, some crazy.
Actually, I've been wondering if they've been wondering whether everyone's been paying attention, because this whole the promotional. Well, I guess maybe you wouldn't have seen. I'm sure you've probably seen somewhere online, but there's been a lot of promotional material of the final episodes of Rick Grimes. That's what the whole ad campaign was, and a couple of leading up to this. Nothing about her leaving, but she is leaving.
Very strange. Very strange. Oh, we'll see what happens. We'll do a Walking Dead episode recap this season.
I mean, I guess it probably would be fair with him with his whatever his last episode is, or both their last episode if it's the same one.
Yeah, I don't know. They just take each other out.
I've been wondering if this ends with one or both of their deaths or not. I guess it would probably have to be at least one of them, right?
I think it'd be interesting if it ends with the death of Maggie and Rick just fuck this, I tried, and he just walks away.
Anyway, I more found interesting just the whole situation surrounding it than the actual episodes themselves. But anyway, moving on to my final segment of what we're watching. We did what we're not watching, what we are watching, and what we will soon be watching. Or at least what I will soon be watching. And that's season 2 of Daredevil starts this week.
Nice.
That releases this Friday.
I've got way too much catching up to do to be able to start that on Friday, but
yeah,
I will be watching.
I figured that was the case. That's why I said what I will at least be watching, because I am so very excited for that. If you haven't seen the trailers or teasers for it yet, I guess you probably have avoided it since you're very behind. But
do I need to avoid it? I'm going to continue to avoid it.
No, actually, you probably wouldn't have to, because all the stuff that they've really said or shown it was all stuff that's either been directly from the end of season 2 or from Defenders. Yeah. So that's all stuff you've seen.
Yeah.
By the way, did you hear? Did we talk about this? That they canceled Iron Fist?
We didn't talk about it. I did hear about it. I'm not surprised after the first season, but I thought people were liking the second one, so I'm curious.
After the first season, I'm not surprised. The second season was significantly better, so I am a little surprised. Although some of the wording around it was interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if the characters continue to live on within the shared universe.
Okay. Like pop up every once in a while?
Yeah, or even just because they did an entire episode of the second season of Luke Cage, Iron Fist. It's a buddy episode with it's Luke and Danny. Okay. I wouldn't be surprised if he just joins that show, or joined it for several episodes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like if they did that and they did it with, I don't know how well. Do you know how well the second season of Jessica Jones was taken?
Still fairly well, I believe.
Okay. I was thinking more along the lines of what they do in what they call the Arrowverse on CW, which is they have all these other characters that they introduced that they were like, well, we want to make more shows. None of these people can stand on their own. Well, let's spin off a show with all of them. We'll just make the ensemble show.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That sort of thing. They've been playing coy with whether or not there will be a second Defenders. I think there will be eventually. And so Danny and those people would live on in that, I believe, because I didn't see anything about them being released from their contracts. And honestly, where it ended at the end of the second season, there's still a lot going on with all of that.
Yeah.
So that's why I was confused. It was very much set up for another season. So that's why I'm surprised they canceled it. It didn't leave on a cliffhanger, but it's there's a lot more to this story probably.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. I would think that maybe a couple of those characters. I was really surprised. Misty, the detective in Luke Cage.
Yeah.
She's in half of the season of Iron Fist.
Huh. Strange.
She showed up. I was like, oh, she'll probably be here for an episode or two, whatever. She was there for the entirety of the second half of the season.
Oh, damn, that's pretty cool.
And I was cool.
I like that they're able to do that, right? That mix and match. It's these are people who are all in the same universe. They're why the hell not? I am kind of curious. I don't think it'll happen. What are your thoughts on? Do you think these characters will ever show up in the MCU? Well, it is
Probably,
the MCU, but like, you know what I mean.
probably not. Though there's a much higher percentage chance of them showing up on one of the movies than anyone from one of the movies showing up in the shows.
And that's more what I was wondering, if you think they'll show up in the movies. I don't think they would go the other way.
They've continued to mention stuff from the movies, and actually even gotten more specific with some of it. And Luke Cage and Iron Fist, so that you still know things are moving apace in that way. Although there was nothing about the Infinity War stuff, so it's hard to tell the exact.
I was gonna ask you that if there was any reference to that.
No, not yet.
Maybe that's what happened to season 3.
But yeah, circling this all back to where I was starting with, I'm really excited for season 3 of Daredevil. I read a review of, they do like the advanced screening. The review was like of the first 6 episodes of the new season of Daredevil, and they're like, they got back to a lot of what was really good about the first season, and it's like a thematic thing. And I love the second season of that show too. Like, I did not have an issue with that in any way. I mean, like, whether or not it was perfect or which season was better, I wouldn't really have a good basis for comparison, because now it's been several years since I've seen the first season.
Right.
But I very much enjoyed that second season. So, and this one is going to feature much more heavily, what's his name, back as Wilson Fisk, Vincent D'Onofrio.
Oh, okay.
Because he was only in the second season a little bit. It's not a spoiler. It's been the heart of the promotional material. He's getting out of prison. He's going to be back in the forefront.
Awesome. That's cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense with some of the other stuff that I have like heard in passing. I'm excited to catch up, because I always loved Daredevil, the character, so I really want to catch up so that I could watch that. One of the reasons I don't think they would actually move those characters over to the actual movies is thematically. I think there's like a line between the movies and the shows. The shows themselves, there's a lot more dark material in the Netflix shows than there are in the movies. I feel like the Netflix show is less accessible for like all audiences.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And I appreciate that you can have both of these things. I just think they're doing a really good job.
Yeah.
Aside from Defenders and the first season of Iron Fist and the second half of the first season of Luke Cage, there's no excuse for those.
I think you could credibly do, if not all of them, something of it in like a Spider-Man, considering it takes place so much at the street level in New York.
I think that's fair.
And especially like going back to the comics, how close of a relationship characters like Daredevil and the Punisher have with Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm. No, that could be interesting. I would love for them to do that, but I would love for them to do it on a level where they kept it under wraps until it was out.
Yeah, I don't know if they would do that, but I think they should do that if they were to.
On the same note, not to harp back on the Walking Dead stuff, I would have preferred to find out watching the season that Andrew Lincoln was not going to be on it anymore.
Yes, although it was reported heavily.
Too heavily, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if it's just because that's how like hard the negotiation was or whatever. I guess that's probably what it was, that like loose lips sink ships in that case, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I guess they just decided, well, we can't really deny it. Everyone fucking knows it, so we'll just lean into it as the promotional material, like try and pull eyes back to the screen. That's how we'll do it. Like lean on that nostalgia.
Yeah. Cool. I'm just trying to think if I'm watching anything. I am watching The Good Place. I'm like an episode behind on that. Absolutely love that show. It's a lot of fun. As I mentioned in previous episodes, Ted Danson is my hero. Watching Walking Dead, as we mentioned. And Arrow and Flash have started up. I haven't started them yet, but those are on my list. Okay. I think that's it. I don't think there's. I feel like earlier I was about to say something else, but I can't remember if I'm watching something else. Oh, I am watching the final season of Big Bang Theory.
Oh, okay.
So there's that.
Never cared for that show.
No, a lot of people don't. A lot of people I talk to don't seem to like that. I always find it entertaining. I know what it is. It's silly. I'm okay with that.
It's another one of those ones I think we've spoken before. I don't like those comedies where they stop for laughter, like canned audience laughter. It just takes me so far out of the experience.
It breaks it for you. That's totally fair. Awesome. Was that the last note on what you're watching? Oh, I finished Better Call Saul. I don't think that was on the last episode.
I don't think so. I think just you and me might have briefly, actually, just very briefly. I think it was just you threw me a text like I finished it. Oh my god.
Yeah. So like just to say, not everything on AMC is a shit show. Just want to point that out. that's
still excellent.
That show is top notch.
Oh yeah.
To the point where it ended, I was like, shit. Now I have to wait a long time for the next.
Me too. I think I feel very comfortable. I think I brought it up a few weeks ago. I feel very comfortable saying that is currently the best show on TV.
Nice.
The torch has been passed with the ending of The Americans to Better Call Saul.
Nice. Awesome. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how that wraps up and ties into an opening for Breaking Bad.
Yeah, me too. I'm curious to see just what level of post Breaking Bad that we get, because they've leaned and hinted pretty heavily that they want to give us more than they've given.
Yeah. Same. Whatever they want to get, I'll just wait, because I know whatever I'm going to get is going to be just of the tippy toppest quality.
Anyway, you want to get into the movie?
Let's do it. So, Bad Times at the El Royale. What did you think?
I actually have a line for this. It's funny that recently we watched a bad movie called Good Time, and now we got to watch a good movie called Bad Times.
Appreciate that. That's good. That could be the opener of your review when you're ready.
Yeah, that would be my tweet length review. Like,
funny how the world works. The movie it's just an insane slow burn for like the first 2 acts.
Yeah, probably the first 2/3 of the movie. Well, no, we start getting midway through the second act. We start getting some action, some violence.
That's true. I guess it's super, super, super slow pace for the first act. It jumps to start picking up a little bit in the second, and then it just goes balls to the wall in the third.
Yeah, I guess the physical action starts to really take off halfway through the second act, but we still don't know how it serves the narrative yet until probably it takes off into the third act.
So this is an interesting movie about a bunch of characters, just straight up characters at this hotel, the El Royale, which is on the border of Nevada and California, which we'll get to a little bit later. I believe serves no purpose, and I guess I'm hoping that maybe you have some light to shed on that for me.
It serves a little purpose other than to establish some fun world building, I think.
Okay.
Because other than that, it probably really doesn't matter all that much, right?
So I do wonder if it's one of those things where if I were to go back and rewatch it, knowing everything that happened so that I'm not about to die of a heart attack, I'm afraid watching this movie, like I was fully expecting my heart to explode. That's how tense I was. There's so much slow build up, and you don't know what terrible thing is going to happen, but you know something terrible is going to happen.
Yes. And
that makes it a lot harder to dissect the movie, because you can't really focus in on anything else other than the thing that is front and center of the screen. And I say front and center because they do a lot of really fun, perfectly symmetrical shots where they do put the point of what's happening directly in the middle of the screen, which actually I liked that style. I liked a lot of the cinematography in it. It reminded me like a weird mix of Tarantino movies and like a Wes Anderson movie.
It's funny that you said that, because I didn't actually write it, but I was thinking it after I watched the movie. Because I saw a lot of references to it being Tarantino-esque, and that it's kind of an homage to those sorts of movies.
Yeah.
And I thought the exact same thing you did, where it's that Tarantino vibe by way of the peculiarity and specificity of the Wes Anderson, like everything, like how the detail with which everything as far as decor and where everything has its own place, and it's all felt like it comes out of like a little puzzle box type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, and he does a lot of those perfectly symmetrical shots, and that was like one of the first things that caught my eye was when they do one of those pan ups, and it's like from the ground up to the hotel, and it's on the line between the two states. And the first thing that came to my mind was Wes Anderson would have a field day with this. He would absolutely love it. And then just jumping ahead real quick, no spoiler or anything here. There's a great, what I'm calling Jeff Bridges' Oscar scene in the movie, a great monologue that he gives where he is front and center in the camera and everything. It's, again, perfectly symmetrical. He's dead center on the screen while he's talking. He's delivering just this incredible monologue to a point where, like, I believe him. Like, I really believe him. Like, as not the character going through this shit, but Jeff Bridges is going through this shit. Like, I feel like that's how good he delivered that. But that's
there's even layers upon layers to that.
Yes,
as we'll
get into that in spoiler territory. But there was a lot of fun. The whole, this side you can have alcohol on, this side you can't. But they're just like mirror images of each other. It was really, that stuff.
It was
silly.
cool, like, and like the way it's like the color scheme, like the main color on the one side is the secondary color on the other side, and vice versa. It's like, it actually, what it reminded me of is in Batman Forever, Two-Face's place. Yep. Where it's that like not quite symmetry, but that yin yang aspect.
And that's kind of what I wonder is if you were to go back and watch it, which is the reason I would go back to watch it.
I definitely would need to go back to rewatch some stuff, and actually we'll get into that with some, like, a big point that I had for this. There's stuff that was like, man, I wish I could just rewatch parts of this just to completely be able to absorb what happened there.
Right.
And I even went to look up one of it online. I think it's just because it's been so soon since it came out. There's not like a lot of clips on there yet.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, though. Is there was so much going on, and everything that you do notice was well planned out for a very long time throughout the movie. That I'm hesitant to believe that this was just like a silly thing that they did. I feel like there's probably some significance to when things happen in the movie. If you were to go back and analyze the scenes, which side, like, because you're not paying attention to it at the time, but which side they were on when it happens, I bet you that is very significant. I
didn't think about that because they didn't matter. Like, there was no gambling or anything that happened. There was no particular criminality that may have been legal in one state as opposed to another.
Right. I can say, though, what I can point out right now is that a handful of scenes that I'm thinking of where something absurd goes down, it was on one side of the line.
Okay.
But there may be one scene that kind of debunks that, and we'll get into that in spoilers if we circle back on that notion. Couple of things to note here, pre-spoilers. John Hamm is amazing. I like him in everything that I see him in. I find him to be great.
I still feel like I haven't really seen him in a leading role in anything, honestly, because I've never watched Mad Men.
I haven't seen Mad Men either. I've only seen him as a supporting character, and in the 3 times that I've seen him, the first time I saw him, I didn't know what to expect, and he blew me away, and that was Baby Driver. The second time I saw him was in Tag, and I actually I thought he did a great job playing off the other characters in that. He's very funny, and
yes, he can be.
He's really good at line delivery, and in this movie, I thought he was fantastic. And the reason why I called you accoutrement in the beginning was because of how many times that he says that early on in the movie.
Yeah, I forgot about that, actually. Yeah.
And it's just...
You never saw The Town?
I did see The Town. I don't fully remember. I would have to rewatch it. I think
he was the FBI agent who was hunting them down.
Okay. That sounds right.
I can confirm that is right.
I actually think I own that. I think that's back there on the wall. I'll have to rewatch that. But I really enjoy him.
He also had a great little role in Parks and Rec.
I'm trying to remember what he was. I'm sure it's
So
something
at the
absurd.
end of the second to last season, was it the sixth season? They didn't know if the show was going to be renewed for another year, and they do that jump forward in time a couple of years, and he's the new Jerry essentially.
Yes.
And Leslie, he's completely incompetent, and Leslie fires him, and he says, "Oh, sorry," and then he's like, "Thank you for the opportunity." The season ends like shortly after, and then when they pick up the beginning of the next season, when they stick with that time jump, he's in the beginning of that scene. You see him get fired again, and like that's the last time you see him. Like he's just in those two, like bookending that, like between the 6th and 7th season.
It's really funny that you brought that up because that ties him to two other actors in the movie that I did not.
There's randomly very small roles for Jim O'Hare and Nick Offerman.
Yeah, so that's really bizarre. I wonder if there's some sort of link there.
Maybe some casting director or something.
Yeah, oh, that's funny. The only other thing that I think I had on here to mention pre-spoilers was the character Darlene is kind of awesome. Like she's just like such a fighter throughout the whole thing, and like is
which is funny because she's the only one who doesn't have like a violent background,
right? Which is great. She's like she's the purest of the characters.
Yeah, when it all's said and done, she's really the only one who you can root for, right?
Right. It's just really interesting to see because she's also, she knows who she is. She knows where she stands. She's such a badass.
She knows who she is and she knows where she stands, even though where she stands is not where anyone else thinks she should.
Right. It's
as they all realize as time goes on.
Yeah, and we're going to get into, we can mention Chris Hemsworth absolutely stealing the screen when he's on. When he's on, he's ridiculous.
He ran hot and cold.
There's a point in the movie where she puts him in his place, and it's like it almost like knocks you back in the seat. Like it's like oh shit.
I don't care.
Yeah, it's like she shuts him down, and like he's supposed to be commanding the room at this time, and she shuts him down, and the way that she does it is just it's the most calculated dismissal in a couple
because she hit him where it hurts verbally, right? She
so good.
So shut him down and dismissed him and revealed to him, probably the only time since he's assumed the power that he has, that he's been revealed to himself as so childish and unimportant.
Yeah, it was in a much more elegant way. He just said, "You basic." And
yeah,
it was so
you are
good.
so not special. It's not funny, and your whole worldview is built upon you being special.
So my quick recap is I thoroughly enjoyed watching the movie. I was super engaged the entire time to the point where I want to rewatch it, as I mentioned before, to actually dive into different scenes and see if there's more that I could pick up on.
For me, there's one very specific thing that I wish I could dive back into because it's the whole crux of the movie actually probably rests upon it.
Well, so I would like to get into that. So all I'm saying is I think this is worth a watch. If you can deal with a little suspense, a little bit of gore, and a lot of bit of crazy, it's a lot of fun. It's
and time. It's a longish movie, and you feel it at times.
And focus. You gotta pay attention.
It's a patience movie. It's a put your phone away, and this is what you're doing. You're sitting down. You're watching this movie. You're not getting up and taking a break, and you're not watching. Oh, I'll watch it later. This is a sit down, watch the whole movie. Shut up.
Exactly. And I will say early on in the movie, as it was going, I was like, certain scenes were unfolding, and I was getting to I was just getting to the point of like, all right, this needs either to change sequence or go somewhere, and then it cuts, and I'm like, thank God, because like there's certain points where you just can't take any more of the slow burn.
It could have tightened a bit.
Yeah,
it could have tightened. I wish this was a visual medium that we did just for when we break out that specific.
Just for that one.
That'll
be it. When we make shirts, that'll be one of them. on the front of it, it'll be you with your hands wide, and on the back, close together, and it'll just say Titan. Amazing. All right. Anything else before we get into the spoiler territory?
No, not really. We can
you vouch for this movie. You think it's a good watch?
Yes, I definitely enjoyed this movie. It was, even though I actually had much more prep for it than you did, it was still very much not what I expected.
Awesome.
In a lot of ways.
Well, with that being said, we are in the spoiler territory from here on out. We will not be holding anything back. We will be not holding things back. Wait, can we listen or not? Yes. Yes, you're gonna do spoilers, or yes, we can listen. No.
Oh wait, no, I'm withholding it. Let's look at me getting off.
All right, we're in spoiler territory. So, would you like to recap what you were actually talking about? The thing that you want to go back?
Actually, I want to get into that a little later. There's other stuff that there's other stuff organically we need to get through before. I'll let you know when I'm ready.
Okay, so let's start off like super early in the movie, like real early on, with Nick Offerman, which like he was only in the movie for this short period of time, and then again later at a flashback. But he's in the hotel room. He's panicking a little bit. He's coming in hot. He's like runs into the room, closes the door. Sweats building, anticipation's building. We want to know what's happened, what he's done. You could kind of assume that he's up to something. Right? It's fairly
nefarious
obvious.
Intent,
right? And with every step and breath that he takes, it's a cold, silent opening. And with every move that he makes, I am afraid that he's going to get shot through the door.
What about with every breath he takes?
And every move that he makes.
That's what you said. That's why I said it.
But he...
well, no, it's not completely silent. He puts the radio on.
Well, up until that point it is.
Okay.
And but what's interesting about it is I was so focused on one particular thing that I thought was going to give it away. He's walking back and forth through the room. The lighting in the room is perfect to the point where you can see the light coming through the peephole. Mm-hmm. And I was waiting to see that go dark to let you know someone's behind the door. And it doesn't happen.
Well, the great thing is, like you, I was also waiting the whole time for him to get shot up until the point that he actually gets shot.
Yeah.
Like, when he finally gets shot was only a second or two after I finally relaxed and didn't expect him to get shot anymore.
They nailed that.
Yeah, I guess it was kind of the whole, like, Family Guy, the thing goes on for too long.
Yeah.
And then it comes back around.
Oh, they did it.
Yeah. And actually, as we mentioned earlier about the Tarantino vibe, that scene sets it up right off the table. You know what I mean? Like, you got all the things. It's the single shot of this entire room.
Yep.
He's pacing back and forth. We get passage of time. We get a montage. We get turning on music, a soundtrack to the action, right? Quick cuts, of time lapse of him doing a task of all of this. We don't know what the task is going to ultimately solve with. Like that, all of it seems like it's ripped right from the Tarantino playbook.
Yeah, it was very much the big pipe scene of this movie. If you've ever seen Inglourious Basterds, the opening sequence of it, Christoph Waltz is smoking a big pipe for a very long time, and something bad's going to happen. It's going to be horrible, and it takes about 15 minutes for it to happen, and it's grueling to sit through. It's just it's horrible. This was a little bit more than that because you knew what the stakes were in that movie. In this, you have no idea. You assume something bad's going to happen to him because we're programmed that way, and the way that it's set up. And then when it finally happens, it's like, I knew it. But God, that took a long time. And what I had no idea what he was doing was when he was moving the furniture around. I was like, what is happening right now? First, I thought he was barricading the door. Then I thought he was first I actually thought he was moving the bed away from where it should be in the room. So if somebody shot into the room, they would miss him. That's what I thought at first. Then I was like, oh, he's barricading the door. And then he's pulling up the carpet. I was like, you're losing me. And then he moved stuff onto the other side of the room and rolled the carpet up further. I'm like, lost me. And then he starts pulling up the floorboards and I'm like, okay, this seems like a lot of work.
And I'm back.
Yeah. And I'm back. How are you going to get those back? And then he just starts putting them back. And I'm like, all right, I guess he was just being real careful. Then he nice and tidy, gets everything back together, and then he dies. And it's like, oh man,
pretty brutally. Actually, let's talk about that real quick. So yes, that was a good indication for everything that was going to come next in the movie. You were saying earlier about the thing about the tension and you felt like you were going to get a heart attack because of,
the movie
oh my God, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
What was giving me coronary issues was how heightened the audio was in big action moments, specifically guns going off, and also that one time that Chris Hemsworth pounds the poker table towards the end. Like, that sounded like a gunshot. I actually thought we were going to look around and see someone got shot, like maybe him. You know, it was one of those things where, like, he pounds the table and you think that's the action, but what the action really was he got shot. And actually it would have been a good parallel considering how cool was that scene where she's singing and every time she claps, he hits
great sequence.
Tremendous. But yeah, no, all of that was so heightened that every time there were times where I'm like, I know in the next 3 seconds that person's gonna pull a trigger. It happened again. Like, and also video even of some of those actions. Do you remember the episode of Family Guy where they steal the video reel to Passion of the Christ 2 Crucify This from Mel Gibson?
Yep.
And then they do the whole thing where they rip off the North by Northwest thing with the plane flying in over top of them and all that sort of stuff. And they're going through this chase scene. They're getting chased by priests and they're getting shot at in the car. And Peter says, "This is way more intense than that time I forgot how to sit down."
Yes.
And that's my favorite cutaway of the entire show.
I would agree with that.
It just cuts away to him standing in his living room, staring at his chair, and then he's just in the chair, spread-eagled, and the chair has been destroyed.
It's amazing.
And
because the beauty of that sequence, if you've never seen it, is the transition from him standing to in the chair. It's not instantaneous, but what they do is they
pulled frames.
They pull exactly, and they
do that in this movie. I'm fairly sure. In some of the action scenes, some of the specific big moments of someone getting shot and someone getting punched, some of that, they must have pulled frames in this because I experienced it the same way as I experienced that cutaway.
That seems fair. I think you might be right about that.
I'm not an expert in cinematography in any way, shape, or form, but that was exactly the way that my mind experienced it, and it happened multiple times in this movie where it was so sped up that it felt like my eyes had trouble like sending that message to the brain, whereas like it was something missing that they pulled frames from some of the things to make it such a sharp, violent action that was going on.
Yeah, how do we make this as fast and abrupt as possible without letting you miss anything?
Yes. Like, it's very clear that person's been blown away, but there's almost been doubt introduced because of, like, oh my God, did I just see what I think I saw?
Yeah, it's like shotgun blast, guy starts to move, but then he's in the window. Like, it's like, whoa.
And it's the same thing. Peter's standing there, and then he's in the chair.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was how I experienced, not every single one, but a lot of the scenes. A lot of the action, like the really, like, crux of each action scene in that regard. I was like, I don't know the details here, but it feels like that's what's going on.
Really crazy. Oh man, there's that opening sequence in the hotel, not opening sequence, post preamble when they're like all those three characters show up in the hotel, which is like the real opening, like
chapter 1.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to me. The two characters.
Actually, that was the whole Tarantino thing too, right? Having like chapters. Now, I know the chapter in this case wasn't 1, 2, 3. It was tied to a thing or a person or a place.
Yeah, that felt very Tarantino for sure. But it's the introduction of. So you have the father and you have what was her name? Darlene.
Yes.
They meeting outside. Bantering back and forth. It's like, okay, so far so good. Like these people seem fine. But you do know on some level that they're not going to be at this place if they're fine. Something's going to be up with each person that we come across, right?
It was like splitting the difference between everyone assembling in Clue and everyone assembling in Haunted Honeymoon, if anyone's seen that.
That's actually, yeah. Okay. I can see that. And then...
if you've never seen Haunted Honeymoon... It's a ridiculous older movie. It's in the 80s, I think, or even maybe late 70s.
I think it might be late 70s.
It's pretty funny. Gene Wilder.
I love that, man.
Dom DeLuise, Gilda Radner, like a whole bunch of like old funny people. Like, it's a good time. It's a short movie too.
Worth the watch. Worth the watch for sure. Maybe we'll do one of those. That'd be a good movie to go over.
You know who we could get to guest co-host in that episode? My mom. She
Awesome.
loves that movie.
That's great. Then we get John Hamm behind the bar making coffee, but doesn't he like not show up right away? Like, how long is he behind the bar?
He's like under the level of the bar for like, I don't know, was it 90 seconds?
Enough time that
90 seconds after the other two characters walk in. Who knows how long he was there before?
Right, exactly. Which leads me to believe that he was spying on them, because as you find out,
he works for the CIA. He was definitely
spy. So that's like, at first in that context of that scene, it makes like there's no reason like why he would be down there, and then after the fact, you're like, oh, okay, maybe he's eavesdropping. Like that makes a lot of sense.
Although if he was a spy, he wasn't a very good one. How long it took him to find the kid who works there?
That's true, but part of me wonders if that was all like if he was just like feeling things out. I don't really know.
Could be.
He also didn't want to blow like his temperament of kind of being lackadaisical.
I'm just saying he could have walked behind the thing and knocked on the door.
True, but when she does it though, like that's the first scene where we see Darlene being a boss, right? She's like, all right, I had enough of this shit. She like flips the thing over and he just slams once on the door and the guy gets up.
Actually, what's his name? John Hamm had the best line. I guess she's got heavier hands than we do.
Yeah, that's great. He's also so rude and dismissive of her. Like, I know, what does he say? Are you the help or something like that? And then he asks her like, if you. I bet you can help me sell. Like some of your friends would want some of these vacuums, and it was just like it's like so rude. But
I mean, yes, it was. Although
of the time.
It was 1969, so very much of the time.
Of the time, but part of me believes that it's because of the character that he's putting on, and then like as it goes on, I wouldn't actually expect that from the real person that he is in the movie.
His role as vacuum salesman, that's what I expect, yes.
Exactly. So, like, he has to do it.
Although, even within that, he softens shortly after towards her.
That's true. Then, speaking of vacuum salesman that works for Hoover, that's pretty great. I really appreciated that.
Actually, I didn't even pick up on that, but that's a good point.
I was like, when I saw him... first, you see him open the case and the vacuum's in there, and then he goes on the call and he's talking to Hoover, and you're just like, nah, that's funny. That's adorable. His character was interesting. One of the other characters that's actually
Laramie Seymour Sullivan, right? Was that his name?
I think so. One of the other characters, though, that's actually for the most part seems to be a good person, does not make it through this ordeal. What's that?
Are you talking about the kid who worked there?
No, I'm talking about John Hamm's character. Like he is a good person, father, husband, working for the government type thing, but he doesn't make it through, and it's because of his good nature that he doesn't make it through, which I thought was interesting.
They could not have been clearer not to interfere.
True. But he does because he sees something that he deems as wrong going on.
Also, probably one of the very few, no pun intended, misfires. There was really no reason for her to blow him away.
No. You want to talk about her for a second? I thought she was the weakest link in the movie.
No, like by far. It's funny. So I saw this movie yesterday, so that would make it Tuesday night. And so on Saturday or Sunday morning when I came downstairs, my dad was watching his favorite modern comedy, Step Brothers. And I walked in on the scene where Adam Scott and them are in the car and they're singing Sweet Child of Mine. And when his wife starts singing, he says, "Oh my God, you're so flat. You're so flat. And oh God, you don't even look good. You don't even look good while doing it. This is what I'm paying $1,000 a week for." And that's what stuck with me as I was watching this. Not the not looking good part, because Dakota Johnson's perfectly attractive. But she was so flat this whole fucking movie.
Yeah. Yeah, she was. It's unfortunate that when she was on screen delivering any sort of line or failed attempt at emotion, that it breaks the experience that everybody else was giving you.
Yes.
Because
yes,
especially when her counterpart, the sister, was absolutely terrifying.
Yes.
And it's just like everybody else was bringing it up, like dialed it up to 11.
Like
and
by
when you're
turns
coming in,
creepy
when you're coming in
and,
with
like,
a 2,
manic.
yeah, it was unfortunate. I think that was just a really poor casting decision.
The only thing right about the casting decision is that they actually did look like sisters.
That's fair. That's fair. I can see that.
And I've never seen anything else. I don't think I've seen anything else that she's been in. I don't know if she's a good actress or not. I never watched the 50 Shades of Grey or anything like that. Yeah, she was just flat in this.
Yeah, it was difficult. It was difficult when she was on screen. But
yeah, it actually pissed me off a little when she shot him.
Yeah.
Even like at that point, not knowing her whole backstory, there was just really no like because at that point we did know she wasn't kidnapping her,
Mm-hmm.
so there was just really no reason for her.
It's 100% out of character. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. If anything, if it was the roles reversed, it would have ended up making sense at the end. If it was the younger one who shot him,
Right.
When we see it in all of it, it would have fit with. She's the one who, other than blowing him away, if she hadn't done that thing, in the end, she would have been someone that you would have rooted for to make it.
Yep.
I mean, despite the fact that she was annoying, she wasn't a bad person. She was trying to do something good. She didn't have any body count on her. You know what I mean? Like, there was nothing up until that point. And that's why it's like jarring. It just didn't. That's the one thing that really didn't fit in this whole puzzle.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Especially when you get those flashback sequences and the sister's fighting somebody and she's super cringing at what's happening.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not just because her sister's fighting, but it's also like you can tell it's just like she's averse to violence, it seems.
Yeah, although we see the fraternal protection thing where, like, because the whole thing, we get the flashback of her as a young girl. She tries to protect the younger sister from the abusive father.
Yeah.
And obviously when she joins the cult, she's doing it to try and get her out. So I understood it from that standpoint. So if he actually did anything to jeopardize it, then I would have understood it.
Right.
But she had him stuck up with the gun,
and he was being protective.
Well, no, but even that part of it, like she had him. He let go of her. He's standing there. Hey, let me talk. She just shoots him. Like there's nothing. Like there was no. He didn't like if he lunged or something. Then I would have totally got it.
The only thing that sequence did is it made for a really clever reveal of
it did. Hotel. It did set up the story interesting. You know, when you see someone finally, like reveal to them the nature of the two-way mirrors and oh shit, this has got fucking levels, man.
Yeah.
But other than that, from like an actual like her like shooting him in that moment did not make any sense to me.
No, I could not agree more. Also, she was just terrible.
Yes, that too.
Yeah, but like I said, that creep show little sister was terrifying.
Yes,
and gets more and more creep. Like a scene that is completely unnecessary is her jumping on the chandelier, yet at the same time, terrifying. Don't know why. Made my skin crawl. It was
okay. Interesting. No, for me, it just kind of felt like it deepened the portrait that we're already seeing of her because she just starts off as kind of seeming creepy and off, and we know she's under sway.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we see how unhinged she is later on, it further depth to that whole like situation. And like you said, she kind of pretty much nails it from start to finish. She does the quiet, creepy early on and the fully unhinged. Yeah. And she's convincing every step of the way.
The conversation on the phone.
Yeah, that's what made my skin crawl.
Oh yeah, 100%. That was not comfortable.
Because in that moment you're like, oh, she's not just like having been kidnapped in Stockholm Syndrome. Like, she's all the way in.
Yeah, she's all in. Then pulling back for a minute and going all the way back to the early parts of the movie. The what was his name? Miles. The manager, the house cleaning, the bartender, the everything, the only employee at the El Royale. What a great intro to this wacko early on, to the point where he does the explanation of the El Royale and like the two different sides of it, and then when the next person walks in, he goes, "Oh right," and he opens the thing and he goes to do the entire spiel again, and I was just like, Like, you see that coming from a mile away, but when it happens, it's still like, okay, all right, I'm gonna give you that one. Like that's
Way to
silly.
stick to the bit, man.
Yeah, exactly. And then the charging the quarter for the coffee, and like each person he has to tell, like he's paying attention, he's observant, which is, I mean, I think that's actually that's kind of letting you know a little bit about him up front that maybe you wouldn't have, like, you don't think about until after the fact.
Yeah, quite the story, right? He ended up being like kind of the most emotionally resonant like storyline in all of it, where it's like, oh, like he's just kind of there doing his quirky little thing, and he's like an oddball or whatever, and then like the amount of like heart to that story is kind of like the heart of the story. Watching the rise and fall of this person who, in the beginning, you're like, he's the comedic relief. It's whatever, you know. And it's like, no, there is real stuff going on there.
Right. So what I was pointing out with him getting, like, noticing like each person needed to pay for their coffee was like that's foreshadowing of him being an eagle eye, right?
Yeah.
And then you get a little bit more of that when they do another flashback sequence. But like, yes, he, like you mentioned, comic relief, all this stuff. But then, I don't know, 20 minutes later, we get a scene of him with a needle in his arm. And you're like, okay, this guy's tormented too. I wonder what his story is. And like, it unfolds.
And they really hold off telling you what the story is too.
They do, and they do it in such a good way where the payoff in the end is so good, though.
The payoff in probably the most unexpected way.
Yeah.
Of all of these ridiculous, unexpected storylines.
Yep.
Especially, well, part of it was I thought they were playing him for being younger.
Yeah.
I thought he was supposed to be more like the 17, 18-year-old type of kid. And if he had gone to serve in Vietnam, he obviously would have had to have been a little older than that. Well, admittedly, you can go serve quite young, especially in that war. But it's clear he was several years removed as well.
Yeah.
So that was a little confusing.
Yeah, and I think that the intention there for me, I believe, is that like you show this innocence seemingly young in age, but this person has seen more shit than anybody in this room.
Pretty much, yeah.
Which is a really cool thing to not know until that sequence when he says, "I've killed too many people," and Darlene says, "How many people have you killed?" And he gives her an exact number, like that. Ooh, like that was.
Well, the thing is, I was still so unprepared for what his story was going to be that I'm like, oh my god, he's like a full-on serial killer. What has he been doing in this goddamn hotel? I thought it was just spying.
Oh, that's funny. I'm
picturing it like a fucking like Psycho Norman Bates type of storyline, or like a Hotel Hell where it's like we turn them in sausage. Like
that could have been like a crazy, funny alternate thing that happened. I thought
they were going twisted, not tortured.
The tortured was the first thing that jumped to. I actually, when he said that, I just assumed I had rapidly pieced together the shooting of the birds and the heroin, and I was like, yeah, the flashback sequence. And I think that was beforehand. But
no, but that happens after.
That's after. I was piecing together different pieces of it, but like the torture thing made sense to me, and I was like, I just assumed, especially with they had Nixon on the TV a few times, and I was like, oh, like this kid's probably been to war, and then they jump right into it, and they show you those
when they said 120, when he said 123, it's like that's such a specific number. That's serial killer shit, where like you keep like a tally.
He rolls his sleeve up, and he's got like 127 track marks, and you're like, oh, you're doing something different in there.
I'm picturing like Dexter with his blood slides, where it's like he has one for each one, like you know what I mean, like when you know the number, not like like hundreds, you know what I mean? It's like okay, I've killed a lot of people,
right?
When you give me a specific number, that's usually not a war thing. You don't always necessarily know exactly how many people you've killed if you've seen extensive action in war.
Yeah.
Now he was a sniper, so that actually ends up making sense after all of that. But in the moment, I'm not thinking Vietnam sniper. I'm thinking, well, you have all these very detailed logs, and we've been taking recordings of audio and video and everything, all of that. Like, you've been killing a lot of these people here, too. And you know every single one of them.
Now, in the same nature of this movie, let's jump back again to the sequence that I was talking about earlier of what I consider to be Jeff Bridges' Oscar-worthy scene, his monologue to Darlene. So Father Daniel Flynn giving his
The
monologue.
first time he tells her about the dementia or whatever.
Yes, and what I love about that is he's still playing the father card, but he's also delivering this line, this whole story about.
Well, he's in character, but still revealing something about his true nature.
Right, and I think that's what was most impressive to me about it, was that he was able to do that, and it's, you understand. Like, I'm assuming you probably felt the same way. This guy's not on the level. I'm not trusting the father piece like early on, right?
Well, on top of the fact that in the trailer you get him saying, "I'm not actually a priest."
I actually don't even remember that. That's another time
that was in the full trailer. You just don't get the context at that point.
Right, that's true. Okay. Well, either way, like, I'm not buying that, but I am buying this piece that he's losing it, that he can't remember these things. And I was
Which is basically what she says at the end too, right? Like, he says, "You really believe in this?" He goes, she said, "That much I do, yes."
That part, yeah. And that's what's incredible to me, is because that is a testament to his acting, I believe. Because delivering that is, regardless of if you're paying close enough attention to the story, if you don't believe that Jeff Bridges, not Father Daniel Flynn, if you don't believe that Jeff Bridges has Alzheimer's or dementia at that point, I don't believe you. Like, because he sold that, like, the tears in his eyes, the tics of his face while he was, like, it was so
incredible face acting, including in addition to vocally what he's done, changing his pitch and tone during all of that.
Incredible. It was absolutely incredible. Like, that is a scene that I would want to watch over and over again and just analyze every little piece of it.
Yeah, that's the scene that they show during, like, when they say, our nominees are, like, they show that clip.
Yeah, exactly. That would be
I don't think
it would be like the
nominate for this, but it would be worthy of it.
Absolutely. And
it's actually kind of the same way I was thinking about it just recently, and I hadn't even got to see it again, so I don't even know why I was thinking of it. But the scene from The Last Jedi when Luke explains what's probably the real truth of the confrontation between him and Kylo Ren in the hut, that one scene there, by far the finest bit of performing that Mark Hamill's ever done.
Yeah.
Like, you can feel it in that moment. Now, when as a younger man, he wasn't really much of an actor, and he became an incredible voice actor. Obviously,
yeah.
That really actually impressed me in that scene as well, and it was that similar, like, bearing your soul. Like, I'm finally stripped and laid bare everything that I've been hiding, all the pretenses. You know what I mean?
What I love about that even more, though, is because he's officially captivated me. Whereas even if I know that he's not on the level. And, like, I still believe that this piece of it's real, which ends up being the case. But what I love about it even more is it further shows you how much of a badass Darlene is, because you ain't pulling shit over her. Like,
the great thing is she believed that part of it at that point, right?
Yes.
And still
had the wherewithal to realize or be observant enough that he was doing something shady. And then that's one of those scenes, one of the jump scenes, where the way that's shot, that's almost like one of those scenes where they like, it feels like you skip a frame. The distance between the jukebox and him, and
although I do like that they end up explaining it, because I felt that way. They explain it later. They showed the different shot from the different perspective later. Yeah. She left her heels there so she could sneak up on him. Yep. That was actually really a
nice
great
attention to
detail thing.
And again, a similar reason to why I think there's got to be more to this whole Nevada, California thing. Whether, not necessarily the states themselves, but the separation of the line of the hotel. I feel like I don't think there's anything that was done in this movie that was done just as a novelty or something like that.
Well, the only thing I could think of, which is immediately undone by what happens, is I know that state by state laws on recording people is different. As far as where they would be admissible in court. But California is the one where I think it's a one-party consent. But they were doing that all in the Nevada suites.
The Nevada suites had the audio bugs, and the California side had the camera.
Was it? I honestly... I'm pretty sure. I remember more than one of them were staying on the Nevada, because I remember seeing him pull the keys that had the Nevada piece on the key.
Oh, you know what? I think I flipped that.
Okay.
I had that reversed. But one side had one, and I think one side had
another. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that was the one thing I was thinking during the movie until I realized that was the case. I was like, okay, then even that's not it. So
Oh, you know what? Here's another great piece of cinematography. The sequence where what was John Hamm's name?
Laramie Seymour Sullivan.
The sequence where he where he gets shot. Doing that scene 3 times, once in the room, once from behind the glass, once from outside, seamless. Like it makes me like I would believe you if you told me that they set up the 3 cameras and did it all at once.
Yes, which is probably what they did.
I would imagine so. Because it feels seamless.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the metronome in the room, like later on, like it's just like on point. It's just like this,
or
crazy...
at least 2 of them. The one behind the glass probably didn't have to because you don't actually see it happen.
Well, you see line delivery though. They do show you the characters on screen delivering lines to each other.
No, I'm talking about the one where it's from the perspective of the priest,
father,
and he's looking down the corridor, so you can't see into the room.
Right. You can't, not during that, but prior to that, when the kid is looking through the glass, and the 2 characters are talking to each other.
Yes, you're right. That is probably all part of the same scene.
Which makes me wonder if they ignoring the down the hall sequence, which could have been shot separately, if they had 3 a 3 camera setup.
Probably. Why the hell not?
I just because that would be beautiful attention to detail, really well done. I imagine you'd be able to tell pretty quickly if they didn't do that if you were to go back and rewatch the movie and go through those scenes one at a time, because anything could be off, like the placing of someone's foot or hand or
just the timing.
Yeah, I imagine I would love to know for sure because that would be really interesting to me. But again, that piece is excellent.
Well, so okay, now that we've hit this all, because I could have jumped in with it at any point, but I guess now is as good a time as any, since we just recently talked about that whole sequence shooting him and the whole thing with the speech about the dementia.
Yeah.
There's 2 instances in this movie where I'm curious, and there could be more, but there was 2 that stuck out in my mind about considering the way these stories were told from different perspectives, and it's kind of this non-linear chapters. Since it's not 1, 2, 3, and we see the scenes circle back around from different perspectives, we get new context and all that. I wondered about whether we have unreliable narrators, 1 or more potentially. I'll start with one that's a little on the lesser side. The flashback, because it's never really explained. The scene with Rose killing someone with a knife.
Yeah.
Because we get that first flash to it where it's her standing the knife, and then we see it again later and the knife's covered in blood and there's a body. And it's an intentionally done thing, right? Where he says, "Oh, that," and they flash to it and then they come back and he says, "Yeah, we have to deal with that whole situation." Or did she tell you that whole situation or something like that? But we never end up hearing that whole story. And I wondered whether the details of all of that, someone knows, someone doesn't know, you know what I mean?
Gotcha. You do know that was on the news at one point.
Was that what that was supposed to be? I wasn't sure.
It was
just because of location and stuff like that.
It was the body covered with a sheet, and they were taking it off while they were massacre or blah 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 blah. Well, they were talking. I
guess you're probably right because they said it was in Malibu, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that was. You know what? I think I misheard it the first time because they did that 2 or 3 times. They showed that news report much earlier in the movie before we get anything on the Rose situation. The first time they showed it, I actually, even though they said Malibu, I think I processed it as them saying Maui. So I thought it was in Hawaii, obviously.
Gotcha.
And then they said Malibu again later, and I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then much later they did the whole, and it was, again, we get in color flashback, and it was a black and white TV, this and that, and they obviously don't show it up close. So yeah, that makes sense tying that all together. I'm still curious as to why.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What the relevance, because it seemed like there was more story to tell because of the way where he's like, oh yeah, did she tell you about that type of thing? It seemed like we were supposed to know more.
Right.
Maybe. So that's what I was wondering, whether it was one of those, did she actually kill the person? Did someone else? Is it was it one of those rite of passage things, being part of the cult?
Interesting.
Is it a thing they had to just cover up because she went off the reservation?
Right.
And that's where that unreliableness came in.
Okay.
But that's a little bit less important than another one. The whole thing with Felix's death.
Felix's death. Oh.
Yes.
What about it?
We never got closure on who killed him.
That's a good point. That I can well, for that one, it could be a weird accountability thing because if you were to think that the flashback sequences are the story told by the person who it relates to, the person who it relates to doesn't have the wherewithal to have a full working memory of what happened.
Sure. But I present to you a situation that I was curious about, and this is what made me interested about the idea of an unreliable narrator. We see that whole scene, and it's purposely shot with that wide angle lens from like zoomed out, You know what I mean? And they do that whole thing. And the way it goes down is he's paranoid, right? He's hiding this money. He's on the run. They've just finished this job that didn't go according to plan. We don't know this yet, but we obviously put that together later on. Someone knocks on the door. He grabs his gun. He sneaks up, looks at the peephole. Okay. He opens the door, and he's got the gun off to the side behind the door so you can't see it. So the person coming through the door can't see it.
Yeah.
We can't see the person coming through the door. We see the silhouette of the person, but he's got jacket pulled up tight. He's got a hat.
Yep.
With wide brim covering his face. And he then beckons him in with the gun. So he's comfortable displaying the gun to the person coming in.
Yeah.
He turns around and gets blown away from behind. And that's the end of what we see. We just see this tall figure standing there who had just pulled a shotgun out of nowhere and blew him away. And then we get Darlene pulling up to the thing, and we see another jarring image as she's getting up and she walks away. And there's a tall man with his jacket pulled up, facing away from us towards the door.
Yeah.
And it's meant to be a jarring kind of similarity, this symmetry.
Yep.
As we were introduced to Father Flynn for the first time. And I wonder whether or not he killed Felix.
I don't think so.
Well, at the time, that's what I wondered because we don't know who he is yet.
Right.
Then eventually we find out it's his brother. It's like, okay. Then we see the flashback. We see the whole flashback. We come up with this plan. You're going to go to the El Royale. We're going to meet. We'll come and get the money after I lose this heat, get rid of this car, blah, blah, blah. And we find out about him and his dementia. And we realize that he's losing a lot of trivial and not trivial details in his memory. I couldn't remember what room we were supposed to meet in.
Yeah.
This and that. We start finding out the depth of it. Another very powerful scene that he acts out. He says something, I don't really recall who I am. And then later on, Billy asks him his name, and he can't remember.
That was brutal.
Brutal to watch. And it was in that moment that I wondered, again, having discarded it previously, did he meet up and kill him, leave the money there because he knew he may still have to deal with the heat? And by the time he comes back around 10 years later, the dementia taking over at this point, does he remember that he killed him?
That's an interesting question.
Because that stark imagery of you see the tall person in the doorway who's just shot him, and then the next time we see it's the mirror image from behind a man standing in front of the door from behind.
Yeah. No, that is interesting. I would want to rewatch those scenes and see if there's any indication. That's
what I was looking for. I wanted to watch it again to just see that first couple minutes of the movie, and I couldn't find that clip online yet.
It didn't cross my mind at the time, but now that you bring it up with those pieces in play.
There's so many details accounted for in this movie that these details to be unaccounted for is what made me think about it.
Yeah, I guess we don't know when he started to experience dementia. We do know he was experiencing it in jail.
Yes.
But we do know that was a while into his sentence.
Yes.
As
And
well.
I'm not saying that he didn't like know that what I'm saying is like I wonder whether he remembers that if his mind, the combination of the dementia and the emotion involved with it and the time that's passed, he forgot his own name.
Yeah.
But he have twisted to the point that he forgot that he killed, like that he tried to bury it away.
I don't know.
That it was, because he says something in the moment of, oh yeah, we might have been burned by the crew. So we've already been established, someone may have betrayed them once, maybe someone else betrayed him again. But this is another part, I have to rewatch that exact scene when they come up with the plan where he says, I'll take the truck, you go take the money. Did they ever even say then specifically, did they say that the plan was prearranged, or did they give the specifics of the plan in that moment? I don't remember. Because if they did, who else would have known where he went?
The other guy.
I think that guy got left behind.
I thought that the two of them ran off and then split up. While...
It could be, but Felix gets to the hotel on his own, and Doc only says the words to him.
That's a really good point. Man, I don't know.
Neither do I. That's really the biggest reason why I want to rewatch this, is to test that theory, because I even looked up online to see if anyone else addressed this, and I saw someone else it was I don't know, it was a message board, it might have been on Reddit. Someone, is it a plot hole or something, or it might have been an article on it. Is it a plot hole that we didn't find out who killed Felix or something like that? And no one brought up the specifics of what I did, shining any sort of potential blame on Doc. So I'm wondering, am I overthinking it, or did I miss something, or am I misremembering something? Because it's such a long movie. There's so many things going on.
I don't think you're over. I don't think so. I'm really curious now, though. I'm not going to be able to think about anything else.
That's why I didn't want to get this into it too early, because I know it's kind of derail the flow. But this is the most interesting thing that I pulled out of it.
No, that's really good. I would like to know that.
Me too, and I think it's something that maybe we'd be able to find out with a few more weeks of it ruminating, people getting online and talking about it more,
or at least theories.
Yeah,
for sure. People that maybe have gone back to see it more than once. I defy you to have answers to these questions after seeing it once.
That's what I'm saying. I don't have it. I need to study it a little bit more to get that. But that was what I found really, really interesting from that whole thing, was we played with so many other tropes in this movie that having the unreliable narrator, when we think about the specifics of some of what's going on, seems very much par for the course. Mm-hmm. And it's the one last true mystery of the movie.
That's so interesting. I like that. Oh my god, I want to know more.
I'm sorry, I threw you down this rabbit hole.
No, that's fine. That's great.
A little lighter, easier. No, I know. I knew you would enjoy talking about it, and I wasn't sure if you had picked up on it, or if I was missing something that you'd remember, that you'd be able to help me put the puzzles together.
I took it at face value.
Okay.
Of him,
which I was doing for most of the movie as well, until he forgot his name.
Right.
And then it all came flooding back to me.
That makes a lot of sense. Oh boy, that one's gonna keep me from falling asleep.
I'm sorry, I went too deep on this one.
That's great. I love it. I love things like this.
Let's talk about how the El Royale is its own character in the movie.
Okay.
Did you feel that way as well?
Sorry,
I was trying to pivot away from that because I feel like I was going to lose you completely. I wanted to pull the reins back.
I don't always follow. There's certain times where I could see that, statements like that, where
I know it's kind of a cliche on its own, but it seemed appropriate in this case.
I don't know how. I don't see it off the bat, or I can't give you a reason why I would say that off the bat for this.
Well, for me, it's more just kind of how this setting feels fully realized. You know what I mean? We talked some about how this, the symmetry, or that yin yang synergy, that whole thing was set up. The we kind of the whole thing with the jukebox and the soundtrack, the soundtrack just being this through line throughout the course of the movie, and how ultimately, as you were saying, whether it be California and Nevada, ultimately didn't matter so much, but except insofar as the mythos, like pulling the people in, like we get some like funny, witty little banter at the beginning of, oh, how's California treating you, and this and that, and
that was
Billy Lee's arrival with him walking the line, in kind of being the bridge to this whole thing, and just kind of the whole the aspect of the corridors and all these mysteries. What's behind this door that we haven't gone behind yet? Oh, it's a heroin addict. Oh, what's behind this door? Oh, it's a corridor to is a perv hotel. I like that. I kind of like that. That was a running joke. Is this some sort of perv hotel?
Yes, that was good.
What do you think? Yeah, I think you're right. It's got to be some sort of perv hotel.
Yeah. That was so ridiculous. But go on about it being a character. I don't.
Well, I guess I was more opening it up to discussion. I was wondering if you had thoughts on that, or if that's not something you experienced in any way, shape, or form.
I didn't experience that.
Okay.
I thought the setting was interesting. I did think it didn't leave me questioning the world building. I just accepted it for what it was, and they did a good enough job of explaining it, I thought, and like revealing it deeper and deeper as we get into like the manager's room, and then this weird sliding door into this crazy darkness that's happening behind the scenes. I liked the idea of it. I liked what was happening there, and like how it set up this crazy set for this wacky story to unfold in.
I am curious just who exactly this management was.
So am I.
I was wondering where that was going, because if you had told me that this stuff was going on, I'd be like, oh, it's probably the CIA. And it's like, oh no, the CIA also has been operating here. And we find out that someone has kind of taken control of that situation away. Mm-hmm. Right? That this is kind of an idea that this, like, someone at some point must have realized that the CIA was doing this and took it a step further.
Right.
And the CIA is like, oh, we've created something that we're no longer in control of. But I wonder what interests that served.
I would like to know who management is.
Considering, 1969, the timeline of it, Cold War, I wondered if this was going to turn into a Russian angle eventually, right? Because like that would make sense.
Yep.
We're a little past the time where it would be the actual McCarthyism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We already have the Hoover aspect, and they end up being the small fish in the pond,
right? Which
is unexpected.
Yeah, that whole thing that just like created intrigue. It's curious. It doesn't really end up being, I guess, I don't think it ends up being super important because it doesn't really have a bearing on what ends up happening story-wise, but it is cool to think about, like, who is this other player, this unknown player?
No, you're right. It's just that's one of the two things, and the bigger of the things, really, that left questioning was, well, what was that all about? You know what I mean?
Who killed Felix and who is management?
Well, no, the Felix thing is a different thing entirely. No, the other thing I was actually mentioning was just who the videotape was of.
I assumed it was JFK.
Which, a very fair assumption. But actually, it could have been one other person, as far as I could see. I ended up being left, and I think actually, ultimately, they choose to leave the person unnamed so that you are left with some doubt as to who it is. It could also have been Martin Luther King.
Interesting.
Both of them were assassinated within a year of each other. And both of them were ideological men known to have had affairs who, like I said, were assassinated in the mid-'60s. And like that's why, I thought it was JFK the whole time too, until Darlene's speech towards the end where she says the whole thing about it's probably some man who said a lot of things, who thought they meant something, believed in something. It could have applied just as equally to either of those two.
That's
and maybe other people as well, but those two in particular, and you talk the mid-'60s, people who people wanted dirt on, specifically who Hoover wanted dirt on.
Right.
Both of those men. People who ideologically thought they meant a lot of, had like big followings, this and that, applies to both men. People who were well known to have had affairs, applies to both of those men. I know that guy. Someone being instantly recognizable, and he's dead. Applies to both of those men at that time.
Do you know anything about Martin Luther King? Do you know anything about his finances?
What do you mean?
Because I would assume that like a JFK affair would have been more a high-profile location than the El Royale.
Well, it seems like it was a fairly ritzy place.
I guess that's true. You have to take the time into consideration.
It
was actually like that honeymoon suite, for example.
Yeah,
was pretty ritzy with the hot tub. That was a silly scene with him sitting in there, wondering where the rest of the bugs are. That was kind of funny.
Yeah, that sequence was pretty cool. Him trying to find all of them. But also the other thing is, if you want to go off the grid to carry out a high-profile affair, that's the type of place you would go.
True.
Even if you're the president, especially in the 1960s.
Right. Sorry, this just dawned on me after, like, as we were talking about the bug sequence. I didn't realize until now. I thought it was two parts of a bug, but he was pulling out two bugs in each location.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too. Like, when I was first watching it, I thought, what I thought it was like a primary and secondary in case one of them failed, the other one was a backup.
Right.
Until I realized
like
that they were matched pairs. Each one was the same exact thing. And you realize that he seems concerned with it all.
Yeah.
And he dialed. Well, the thing is, at first, I just assumed he was someone doing spying and just knew what to look for.
I do spying.
And then at the end, when he calls and it's very obvious he's called the CIA, I was like, oh, okay, he's realizing things are not okay. And that's what it ends up being. And that's why I thought the whole Russian angle would probably play into it, but I ended up possibly being wrong. Like I said, we never found out.
Yeah.
But those are the two big mysteries, other than this whole thing about whether or not Doc killed Felix. Yeah. Those two mysteries kind of tied together. Who is management, and to a lesser extent, who is the person on the film? Because I think it just as easily could be either of those two guys.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't give it much thought. I guess it doesn't really make...
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Burn it, and I think that's kind of the important thing is, like, you get the picture, you kind of get what it's all about, but it doesn't really matter. We don't need to relitigate all that stuff 50 years later.
Yeah. It's basically what Darlene says. It's like, it doesn't matter who's on it. Like, why unveil this thing? Some guy did something. It was really... She's so done with just the bullshit of the world. It's really great.
And like you said, like she is like the soul of the movie, right?
Yeah.
She's the one that we end up rooting for. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're rooting for Doc some just because a few things. One, it's Jeff Bridges. Two, he had such a compelling story. Three, he pulled some badassery of his own through it all. But in the end, he's a crook. You know what I mean? Yeah. You genuinely feel for.
His character creates some of the most emotional sequences in the movie. Like we already talked about his monologue, which is amazing. But the end sequences with Miles, or the multiple times Miles tried to confess to him, and Miles coming to terms with the fact that he's going to be killed tonight, and then still trying, and then not being so innocent to a level where he still doesn't realize that this guy is not a priest.
Yes.
Until it has to be told to him, and it completely shatters him.
Actually, that scene kind of fits with. It reminded me of Galaxy Quest. Which is funny considering you sent me that picture recently of
You have saved us.
No, not him. Of the bad guy from Saris, I think his name was. When they're interrogating him and he says, "Tell him or I will."
Yep.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Tell him or it's this deception. It's obvious to everyone else except for you.
Yeah.
And that was pretty heartbreaking because you could see how tortured he was at that point, like Miles was, and it was actually ended up being a nice moment that he gives him what he's looking for.
So good. Oh, that sequence is horribly heartbreaking.
Yes. But, especially because that's the point where you finally feel a connection to that character.
Yes.
And then he pulls off the very much unexpected, saves the day. And the worst part about it was the whole time you see it coming a mile away.
Oh yeah, you know it's.
And it's heartbreaking that he can't, because it's like, how does everyone else like has to know, right? It has to know she's gonna snap and kill him. Please stay as far away as possible. Oh God, we've all seen the flashback of her stabbing the shit out of someone. No one else knows this except for her and Billy and maybe Emily, because she's trying to put two and two together with that whole storyline, which we never really got a kind of closure on. Whatever, unimportant, I suppose. And he's got the gun, and he's not just going to hold off and shoot this girl because she seems like an innocent young girl, and he doesn't know any better. He should have been able to pick up on what's going on based on the conversation happening in that room, that she is not to be trusted in any way, shape, or form. Let alone to put my gun down and go console her after I just killed the guy that she's in love with.
Terrible. And that just plays to the innocence of the character, which is it's sad. And but right before it all goes dark and sad, we do get this ridiculous sequence of unmissed shots where Deadshot enters the movie and is just popping people off one at a time, but just this crazy accuracy. Again, another scene where it does seem like they might have pulled frames from.
Yes.
It's like snap, pop, he's just in different locations shooting.
Yes.
It's but there's also movement, which is weird. It's very strange.
Also, what I found interesting about all that was a lot of the times the break to a flashback, it felt on time, and there was a certain beat to it. And this thing, they held off for so long before finally giving us the payoff. And then it's like, oh God, we've reached the climax of the movie. You actually have to wait a little while. We have to tell you a story.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, what is going on?
Why?
About this, but no, what's going on right there?
Right. Oh my God. That's
everything is on fire. Okay, fine. Tell me, quick. Tell me what's going on.
It's really sad about the character of Miles is I feel like he's on this seesaw the whole movie of not wanting to die, but also not wanting to live anymore with what he's done. And it's this horrible back and forth that ultimately ends up in him dying. But it's just everything about it. Any death is sad, but everything about it leading up to it and building on that character and then giving you all that information right before it happens really does drive the point home of how sad it is.
Yeah.
It's beautifully done.
Yes.
Oh man. So you want to talk a little bit about Billy Lee?
Sure.
So I think they just get high and walk funny, and then we'll shoot around you. But
as often as possible, we will let you have your shirt unbuttoned because you have to take the maximum amount of advantage of you in Thor shape on screen.
Let's be serious. Man or woman, straight or gay, everybody wants to be that.
Everyone wants to be that or be with it.
What is it in the Anchorman? Women want to be with him. Men want to be him. Yes. Oh man, but he's creepy. He's creepy to a level of it reminded me. Well, not just thematically because of the cult thing, but the creep show factor of it did remind me of the following.
Okay. Of
certain times where you actually finally get what was it, the guy, the Joe something? Joe Chill? No, that's Batman. What was his name?
It was definitely Joe.
Joe somebody. Well, anyway,
that was the show.
That's a Tim Allen movie, isn't it?
What?
Joe somebody? Anyway, on the following, it was a cult if you're not familiar with it, Kevin Bacon, this other guy whose actual name in the show I can't fully remember. I know it's Joe, and I can't remember the actor's name, but he did a really good job of playing a creep show as well. What was it?
James Purefoy.
Yes, I thought he did a great job on that show. But he's
a good actor.
That creepy factor of commanding the creepiness when you're on screen. I thought he did a really good job of that.
At times, I kind of felt like it ran hot and cold at times.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, yeah, I thought he did a good job. Joe Carroll is his name.
Joe Carroll, not Joe Chill. That's really funny.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't Joe Chill. Yeah, no, I could see that. It was Joe Carroll by way of Val Kilmer as what's his name, Jim Morrison.
Okay.
There was kind of a him as Jim Morrison in the movie about him.
That's
vibe with the white shirt and it unbuttoned and this and that, and kind of maybe even just tinge of Johnny Depp as
just
Captain Jack Sparrow because just the arms out,
a puff of weed and a tinge of cocaine.
Yes. That portrayal fueled by cocaine and evanescence.
Oh my goodness. But all right. So what didn't work for you?
I don't know. There was just times where he felt small.
But isn't that the point though?
No, not in the way that I think you're taking it. In the way that she revealed the way that Darlene revealed. No, I just thought there was moments where yes, he had that charisma. Everything was in relation to him. And there was times where that illusion felt broken, but not in the room when he's quote unquote in power. I mean, like scenes prior to that where it just felt like the illusion broke. I don't know why. It's hard to describe.
There's just certain bits of it that didn't work for you.
Yes. Yeah. It just, I don't know.
There was like at the camp or?
Yes. That extended sequence at the camp.
I think I would agree with that. He didn't come into his own until the third act sequence.
Well, the first scene where we see him walk down the beach and he's talking to her for the first time, all flowed right, I think, because it's that whole reeling her in thing. Which actually, that is what I'd be a little curious about, how that whole relationship started. That is where there was some untapped backstory that I could have used.
Wasn't that it?
How did she end up on that beach with that guy?
She wasn't with the guy when she ended up on the beach, was she? He walked up to her on the beach. She was just on the beach.
It felt like there was a sense of purpose to the meeting, that it wasn't pure chance.
I thought it was chance. I thought it was because it's almost, he's kind of guessing at where she's from and all this stuff.
Yeah, but it felt like more than serendipity. I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't know. It seemed like something more than a chance meeting.
Okay.
I don't know why. That's just how I processed that scene. But yeah, no, once it got like that whole thing, I totally got it, where he is the whole world to her in that moment. Right? And they do it with him having, the shirt billowing around him, and it's shot from her perspective sitting down on the beach, so she's looking up into the sky and the sun is kind of creating a halo effect behind him.
Yep.
Where you get that kind of ethereal, otherworldly characteristic where she becomes the center of his universe. He becomes the center of her universe. Mm-hmm. And some of him giving the speech at the camp, again, it's that the words have weight and everyone is hanging on every word. But there was other times where he just felt small, like he no longer commanded it. And I don't know if it was maybe just a take-by-take thing.
Could have been.
Or if they just shoot it a couple of different ways and put it together, you know what I mean? And then through most of the beginning of him arriving at the El Royale and going through all of that, I would agree, especially as he starts to ratchet it up. Yep. And I thought it was really cool, like as they were arriving, him walking that line, the two of them coming out and getting grabbed up by his guys, all executed in silence. was actually really cool.
Yeah.
And then
super eerie.
Tying them up and all of it kind of being a little slow motion even as they get tied up and dragged up. And the way he starts off that thing, yes, you're right. It's like, it was electric at that point. But there was just moments where it felt like the illusion broke up until the point where she forcefully breaks in its own purpose. And we get kind of these wild swings.
Yeah.
As there's this push-pull to figure out who's going to gain the upper hand. So I'm on board with all that because, like, you get it. It's like that's the moment where it's undecided. The coin's been flipped, and we're going to find out what side it lands on. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Earlier on, there was just there was just moments where it just felt like it ran hot and cold for me. I
think I can kind of get behind you on that one. The beach sequence, I was behind. There's something about like the daylight that takes away from the character a little bit because like you have this character that is dark and scary and creepy and
he's meant for the shadows.
Exactly. So that I think that setting alone could do some damage to the portrayal. I'm curious if that has anything to do with why you felt that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Although I did think it made for interesting his whole speech setting up to we're gonna have ourselves a tussle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This and that, and it's that quick switch from where these high-minded thinkers and we're throwing off these conventions of society and all this stuff, and it kind of felt hippie free love for a minute, and then it turns into some gritty, dirty, gladiatorial
weird shit
struggle.
Mm-hmm. That's creepy.
And maybe it was just because of how creepy the relationship itself was, but I think I was also thrown some when they lean into the relationship between him and Rose in the El Royale, where the whole thing, yep, she's mine, you know what I mean? Like that whole thing, are you mine? Yep, you're mine. Mm-hmm. It was creepy because like that's supposed to be like a young girl. It was just weird, and I guess it's supposed to be, but it made me uncomfortable.
But so it's super important though because that ends up like that gives you the Darlene shutdown, which is it adds to that. I feel like even more.
Yeah, it was the age thing that was creeping me out.
Yeah, well, you're just a disgusting like minuscule nothing person. That's what she ends up like boiling him down to. Which that part was great, and I mean we've talked about her a bit, but. Man, Cynthia Erivo, I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. Yeah.
She was great in this.
Absolutely. She owned it.
I don't think she's really got a lot in the way of acting credits. I think I had seen a couple weeks ago. I think actually she's done a lot of stage stuff. That's why she got the singing aspect. I think she's done Broadway stuff.
Okay.
I'm looking. She's got like an episode of something here, 2 episodes of something there. She's also in that movie Widows I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, which isn't out yet. I
did see a trailer for that, by the way.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, that played.
Are you as on board as you sounded when we were discussing it?
It looked okay.
Okay.
But I wasn't like blown away or anything.
Okay, I was just wondering because you seemed interested when I brought it up.
Yeah, when you brought it, I think hearing about it was more interesting than the trailer, which it could be. I could always chalk that up to it could have been the trailer. It could have just not been that great. The story, like the premise, sounds interesting.
Yeah, no, I wasn't blown away by the trailer itself. I just thought it was a cool concept.
I like the concept for sure.
Okay,
it's kind of it's interesting.
So this was her first real feature role, and that within the next few weeks as well will be. We'll get a double dosing of her right off the bat, and she got a few things in production or whatever. But yeah, no, she's not really. This has been her first actual real role on screen.
Oh, cool. Wow, what a way to bring into though. Like that's right? Awesome.
Because she could have just been like, okay, we want to show off that she's a singer. She could have just been in any sort of musical type of role, and instead we build this movie around her and the music.
Yeah.
And find some way to tie it all together into a bigger thing. That's she's not just singing. Like there's a reason. It's not just that she's a singer. It kind of marries into that whole idea of having this music as a through line throughout the course of the movie. And also she can act. Like like she also has a couple of really big scenes like that one with Billy Lee where she just completely strips his whole facade down to its core.
When he tries to respond and she just goes, no. Like,
I don't care. That's what I don't care.
Yeah. It's so good because he's so used to getting his way and getting under people's skin that it's like that Dark Knight line, like the like this runaway train, like hitting this unstoppable force, like hitting this brick wall. Like she's like, you're not getting through me. Like I know you. This isn't gonna work. Let's go on to the next step because this is boring me.
It's great too because you see his best attempt is when he tries to regain a modicum of control and get her to sing, and she sings, and like he thinks he's like got control back when he does the whole thing. I've heard better.
Yeah,
and he just comes off sounding smaller and more petulant than ever before.
Yeah, he's from his interaction with her. It's all downhill for him from there. What I love about it, he doesn't get to recover even the littlest bit.
No, because that's the thing is he thinks he's back in control, and for just a moment, that's the way it could have gone too. But even had it ended with him in control of the situation, he ends up killing them and walks away how he wants to. Mm-hmm. He's never the same again after that, if that's how it goes, because he knows that someone has revealed it, and one of those people in the room, one of those true believers, that his biggest fear is that one of those people heard those words and it resonated.
Yep. Absolutely. Because all he cares about is what people think about him as this.
That it doesn't come into play in that scene, but a week, a month, a year from now is when it's going to come back to bite him.
I also think that sequence, along with other things going on, but that's the point that drives that thing home. That gives Doc the courage to and the strength to get up and bash this guy's face in with his head. Yes. It's like oh we have the upper hand now, bitch. We might all be tied to chairs right now, but we won. It was really great.
And I can't stress enough again how cool that scene was where she's singing and she just starts the clap.
Yes.
And they time it up. Good. With Emily watching through the mirror, and it's one of those things that it butts up against again kind of contrivance, because at what point could she have been walking in and she can't know when she's there, right. And they're doing this whole thing and it syncs up perfectly, and it doesn't matter that it's too convenient because for a moment time stops.
Yeah,
everything focuses on that sequence.
The amount of times that you probably unintentionally hold your breath during this movie is just uncountable.
And it's so great too because as it's going on, she's sitting there with the shotgun, she's ready to go. She flicks on the thing to hear, and you see even her, whose resolve was steel the whole time, cracks a little bit. I don't if it's that she taps the gun with her hand or she taps her foot, but she gives it into the cadence of the music. Mm-hmm. I can't remember which of those things she does, but I know that they finally give they betray the slightest movement where she's keeping time with it, and it's even she's cracked.
Yeah. Also, this girl's good.
Yeah.
She can sing.
Which also kind of made it a joke when it's he says, I've heard better, or the whole situation.
No, you haven't.
But the whole situation with the producer about her not being good enough, and it's maybe you need to reevaluate your ability to catch talent because she's damn good.
Yeah. Oh man, awesome. You got anything else?
Just one random side note about those being the weirdest, shortest cameos by Shea Whigham and Jim O'Heir.
Shea Whigham?
Shea Whigham was the doctor who tells him that he's got dementia.
Who is that though? The name's not ringing a bell.
So it's funny that you said that because remember how I texted you the other day about that article on The Ringer for First Man about the top 10 of those guys? Mm-hmm. He was one of them on that list. And the last those guy that we would have remembered him from was...
Oh, that guy. Yep. I just looked him up.
From Kong Skull Island.
Yep. That's really funny.
The guy who has the noble but ultimately irrelevant sacrifice at the end of that movie. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's been in a million other things too. He was in American Hustle and a whole bunch of other shit too.
But more importantly, Larry Gary Gergich.
Larry, Gary, Gergich.
Yeah. Larry Gary Jerry Gergich.
Yeah. Yeah, just having like 3 lines as announcing her runs. Like, what was he doing there? They didn't need to cast an actor who was a real person for that scene.
That's
kind of the same thing with Shea Wiggum. Like he's
they
a good
need
actor.
to cast an actor that was a real person. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
They didn't need to cast someone who was someone in either of those roles. I was just very confused.
No, it was kind of silly.
Actually, speaking of kind of cameos, like it's basically what Nick Offerman was in this too. He had a little bit more relevance to it all and a little bit more screen time. I saw him in a role the other day that I didn't realize he was in, and I was truly shocked. And I actually had meant to include this with the "What are we watching?" And it's fine. Potential idea for a movie, for an episode in the future. You've seen Sin City?
Mm-hmm.
Are you like well familiar with, or is it like something you've seen once?
I've seen it probably 3 or 4 times, but like when it was relevant.
Yeah, so that movie came out, what was it, like 2006 or something like that?
Yeah, it was a while back.
So in that time frame, it's called 2006, 2009, in that area. Huge fan of that movie. Really, really loved that movie. And I still enjoy it. It's just been a very long time since I've seen it. Out of it.
2005.
Okay, I was close.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that whole time frame, it was like 4 or 5 years after it came out. Like, huge fan of the movie, and I saw it a bunch of times in that time.
It's a good.
Haven't seen it since, much.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on TV the other night. It was when I was like, oh, I got a little time before I'm gonna go to bed. Oh, I'll watch that for 5 minutes. I like that movie. And it's a huge cast, and I'm familiar with all of it. So Nick Offerman is one of the henchmen in one of the segments of that movie, and he looks like he's in like a biker gang type of like character.
Okay.
He has buzz cut, bleach blonde hair and facial piercings. Nick Offerman.
I feel like I can picture it.
Can you? Because
I think so.
Someone else popped up and was like, oh, is that? And I don't remember. I looked him up and I saw Nick Offerman in the cast. I was like, man, I don't remember him being in this movie. And then like 5 minutes later, he showed up on the screen. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yep. Yeah, I just pulled up a picture of it.
Horrifying.
Yep, it's pretty creepy. That's funny. I would not have remembered that though without you detailing it.
I didn't either. The last time I saw that movie was well before I seen Parks and Rec. Yeah. I would have had never been able to make that association. That's something we could do in a future episode. I'd have to sit down and watch that whole movie because I used to love that movie. It's been a while since I've seen more than like 5 or 10 minutes of it.
I would definitely be down to rewatch that and go through it. It's a good one. Solid flick. Awesome. Well, that's it for this week's episode of Flix in the Six. Thank you for joining us. If you have a topic for the show or a movie you want to hear us cover, you can send those requests to flixinthesix@spintune.com. We'll be back next week for more movie and beer goodness. Till then, I'm Anthony. He's Al. Cheers.